Okay, then I'm going to call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are meeting here at Town Hall and in the various locations where we are situated is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to live in this area and add to the richness of our community. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. There is no addendum this evening, just three very brief announcements, actually two. The first relates to a program that has been started relative to our school children. It's called Blue the Butterfly, and it's a safe and active travel to school initiative that is sponsored by the City of Niagara Falls and the town of Fort Erie through funding that they have received from the Green Communities Canada and Ontario Active School Travel programs. And this is a program that encourages children to walk, rollerblade, bike, jog to school in order to accomplish a number of things. First of which is it helps our children to live active lifestyles. Secondly, it helps to reduce the conflict between vehicles and children at schools at the beginning of the school day and at the end of the school day. And thirdly, it's good for the environment because the fewer parents that are driving their children to school, if they have an alternative, the better. So I want to commend Jennifer Penelaggi, who's been involved with the town of Fort Erie, and any of the town staff who have worked on this program. And I hope that it will take a root in Fort Erie among our schools. And the plan is that once it's fully implemented in Fort Erie and Niagara Falls, it will be expanded to other municipalities in Niagara. And the second thing that I wanted to mention was that today is the first day in some time that there has not been a new COVID-19 case recorded in Fort Erie. We are still the highest municipality per 10,000 people in terms of active cases, but that number is coming down and it seems to have stabilized. There's still a lot of concern in the community, so I would urge everyone to continue to follow public health guidelines. Okay, that then takes us to declarations of pecuniary interest. If there are none, then we have some upcoming public meetings. We have the budget schedule, which starts this Wednesday with our capital budget and forecast. That's November the 17th. Then on December the 8th, we have the water and wastewater operating budget and fees analysis. On Wednesday, February the 2nd, 2022. Can't believe that I actually said 2022. We have the library assessment analysis and general levy operating budget. If we require an additional meeting, it will be Wednesday, February the 9th. All those meetings start at 6 o'clock and are available digitally over the internet by video teleconference. If, as we proceed with the budget bylaws, the anticipated schedule is December the 13th, which is a Monday, the preliminary capital budget. Monday, January 17th, 2022, water and wastewater budget and rates. And February 28th, 2022, the general levy budget and general capital budget. We have a public meeting with respect to a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 323 Central Avenue, which is scheduled for December the 6th, 2021 at 6 p.m. The information report on that will be available on the preceding Wednesday, which I believe is December the 1st. And we have a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendments public meeting the same day, December the 6th at 6 p.m., and that's relative to 1107 Garrison Road. And again, the information report for that public meeting will be available on our website on December the 1st. We have a couple of public meetings this evening, and the process for those public meetings basically, which are being conducted digitally, is that individuals who wish to participate electronically in the public meeting will log in, and then they will make themselves known to those operating the public meeting from the staff side. If you are participating, you have to be aware that you will be muted until such time as you enter the meeting, at which time you will then be activated and you'll be able to address council and respond to any questions that we might have following your comments. The way this public meeting proceeds is a member of staff will be addressing council to provide background information relative to the application, following which any member of council who wishes may ask that staff member questions regarding the presentation. After that, the proponent or the person who's making the application will be permitted to address council and then respond to any questions that members of council might have. Following that, any individual who wishes to speak in support of the application, of course, other than the applicant, may address council. After that, anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or simply ask questions of council may do so. And then following that, if we've received any emails, mail, communications since the report was prepared and put into our agenda, the clerk will read that into the record so that it will be part of the public record for the public meeting. If you wish to be recognized, once you're into the Zoom facility, you need to raise your hand, raise your virtual hand, and depending on the type of device you're using, it will either be something that shows underneath the list of items on the right-hand top side of your iPad or at the bottom of your laptop. If it's a phone, I think it's *9, and Mr. Butler will correct me if I'm wrong on that. And then once everyone has had an opportunity to address council and the clerk has provided any additional comments from those who have submitted comments, we will typically declare the public meeting closed and move on to the next meeting. So at this point, I will, I guess before I go any further, did I get everything, Madam Clerk? Okay. So at this point, we're going to proceed with the proposed zoning bylaw amendment for 57 Idlewild Street. That's property owned by David Smith and Charlene Smith. And I understand that Daryl Vanderveen is going to be providing us with a presentation. Good evening, Mr. Vanderveen.
Good evening, Your Worship. Thank you. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information regarding a proposed zoning bylaw amendment for part of 57 Idlewild Street. Oh, excuse me, I'm going to start sharing my screen. There we go. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment seeks to permit development of a single detached dwelling on a part lot and an existing registered whole lot on Plan 511 that are proposed to merge together via a future application for a deeming bylaw. The deeming bylaw will deem the whole lot to no longer be a registered lot on the plan of subdivision, thereby causing it to merge in title with the part lot to the west. The zoning bylaw amendment will apply to the consolidated parcel formed by the part lot and the whole lot, and is required to develop the consolidated parcel. This zoning bylaw amendment proposes site-specific zoning provisions to permit the following: reduce lot frontage, reduce lot area, increase lot coverage for the proposed dwelling. Notification of the November 15th, 2021 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the October 21st, 2021 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on October 21st, 2021. The subject property is located in the south end neighborhood of the town of Fort Erie on the north side of Idlewild Street. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, single detached dwellings, Gilmore Road, and the Gilmore Lodge Long-Term Care Facility. To the south, single detached dwellings, a commercial building, and a multi-residential property. To the east, single detached dwellings and a commercial building. To the west, single detached dwellings. The subject property is designated low-density residential in the town's south end secondary plan. The low-density residential land use designation permits single detached dwellings. The secondary plan notes that the neighborhood is largely built out and that any new low-density residential development will likely come from consent or limited vacant parcel infill. The secondary plan notes that infill development can be expected to represent a more compact design and promotes opportunities for slight intensification on vacant or underutilized properties. There are no natural heritage features on or in the vicinity of the subject property as identified on Schedule C of the town's official plan. Similarly, the subject property is not identified as having any archaeological potential on Schedule D of the town's official plan. The subject property is currently zoned residential 2 R2 zone. This slide illustrates the preliminary dwelling design for the consolidated parcel. A zoning bylaw amendment is required to develop the parcel as it has less than 12 meters of lot frontage. The town zoning bylaw permits development on existing undersized parcels, provided they have a minimum lot frontage of 12 meters. The consolidated parcel formed by the merging of the part lot and the whole lot will have 11.43 meters of lot frontage. This zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to change the zoning of the consolidated parcel from residential 2 R2 zone to a site-specific residential 2 R2 zone with special provisions to permit the following. Reduced lot frontage of 11.43 meters. The R2 zone requires a minimum lot frontage of 15 meters. Reduced lot area of 348.49 square meters. The R2 zone requires a minimum lot area of 510 square meters. Increased lot coverage of the proposed dwelling to 39.4%. The R2 zone limits the lot coverage of dwellings on lots with less than 510 square meters to 30%. The remainder of 57 Idlewild Street will remain residential 2 R2 zone. And this slide just illustrates the proposal. So lot 197 is the lot that's proposed to be deemed by the deeming bylaw and will merge with lot 196 to form the proposed development parcel. And this is the retained parcel, which will remain known as 57 Idlewild Street. Excuse me. So the existing dwelling on that lot is proposed to remain. This is looking north at the proposed development area from Idlewild Street. And this is actually roughly the lot marked out by orange construction fencing. This is looking northeast into the site from Idlewild Street, and that's the retained dwelling, 57 Idlewild Street, visible at the rear. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van der Veen. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Van der Veen? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to Mr. Van der Veen. In regards to the lot coverage, if they put the house smaller, could they not meet the requirements of lot coverage? Like it looks like it's a pretty big house on a small lot.
Mr. Van der Veen?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor Noyes, it's a possibility. I would note that the proposed dwelling is a one-story bungalow, and that lot coverage does include an attached garage. In total, it's about 1,500 square feet. So, yeah, it's a possibility to, potentially reduce the lot coverage, but staff did conduct some analysis of the area and found that the dwelling size is similar to other dwellings in the area, as is the lot coverage.
Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Mr. Van der Veen, can you go back to the overhead slide that shows the severance lines?
Sure, one moment.
I think it's the third from the end. Yeah, that one there, yeah. So that's it there. So I see that you got the orange dotted line with the black space, and then next to it is the one they want to develop. Looks like a red dotted line.
That's correct.
Is that going to be the new lot?
Yes. So lot 197.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, we'll be merging with this part lot to form this parcel. and that's the development site.
Okay, what I'm seeing here is that I'm a little confused as to what we got here, because it looks to me like you got lot 195, then lot 196. 196 is going to be cut in half, and what's happening with the other half of it?
Yeah, through the mayor to the councillor. So right now, this lot is already a part lot, so the property owner owns this half of lot 196. And the property owner to the west actually owns the other half. So it's already a split lot.
So lot 195 is going to own that little strip?
That's correct.
Okay, all right, so the lot that you want to create, from what I'm looking at, looks like it's bigger than the other lots I'm looking at, from what I'm looking at to the left. Like 192, 193, 194. What are the sizes of those lots, the frontage?
They're 25 feet of frontage each.
So this new lot that you're going to create is going to be how much?
Just under 40 feet of frontage.
So that there'll be more, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, that's, yeah, I thought I was seeing it right. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vanderveen, just so that we can get clear, Councillor Lubberts, you're thinking that the newly created parcel is going to be wider than the parcels to the west?
It looks to me like, I mean, is that what they're saying here, that
No, so
what I'm seeing here is there's a red line, a dotted red line with a black space. Is that the size of the lot? Because that's the way I'm seeing this.
right, it's 1.5 lots on that plan.
Is that the lot that they're going to build the new house on?
Correct. But it's not wider than the lots to the west.
Well, Mr. Vanderveen just explained that lot 196 is going to be cut in half.
That's right.
So that half of 196 is going to join with 195.
Right, and I think 195 may also be owned by, 194 may also be owned by the same property owner. Do you know that, Mr. Vanderveen?
That is correct.
And then 192 and 193 are owned by one property owner. So there are actually two plots of land made up of multiple lots to the west.
But they're all buildable lots, right?
Well, no, they're not. They're not buildable lots right now. 194 may be, I don't know. Can you comment on that, Mr. Vanderveen?
Yeah, just to sort of describe it a little bit. So the parcel to the west here, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 whole lots on the original registered plan, and then this part lot. So individually, these lots aren't buildable under the current zoning. They would be in the same situation as the proposed development lot. They would need basically a zoning bylaw amendment approval to build. Individually, I don't think there's enough lot frontage for these lots individually, but this is a good sized parcel here to the west. It's currently 4 whole lots in a part lot, if that helps explain it a little bit better. The black lines are the assessment parcel boundaries. The green lines here are the lots on the original plan of subdivision. And then the red boundary here is the development site with the whole lot in a part lot. And then the orange boundary here will be the retained parcel, 57 Idlewild Street. So right now, 57 Idlewild Street, as it's being assessed, is 3 whole lots in a part lot. So this proposal is to deregister lot 197, have it merged with the part lot to form a development parcel.
So I guess what's the frontage of 192 and 193 combined?
I believe it's 50 feet of frontage. I'm just going to quickly verify that.
And so you're asking for what? I lost, what happened?
Yeah, so this proposal is proposing a lot with 11.43 meters of frontage.
Can we put the slide back up?
Yeah, just give me 1 sec. That's 37 and a half feet of frontage. I'm just going to measure those other two lots there.
Can you put the slide back up?
Yeah, sorry, I only have one screen, so I have to measure it quickly here, and then I'll pull the other
Oh,
stuff.
all right, okay. So 192 and 193 combined are like 50 feet?
That's correct.
And the new one that you're proposing is going to be how wide?
37 and a half feet.
So you're 12 and a half meters shy, right?
Feet.
Or feet, 12 and a half feet shy of being the same as everybody else?
Yeah, that is correct. If these were both two whole lots, they would be 50 feet of frontage. But due to lot 196 being a part lot where
Yeah.
the current property owner owns half and the property owner to the west owns half, that's resulting in the slightly smaller frontage on the part lot.
So
When
getting
merged
back
with
to
the
what Councillor Noyes was asking, yeah, the house that you want to build on this lot is the same size as the houses in the neighborhood, but the lots in the neighborhood are bigger. So the houses naturally would be bigger. So why are we not requesting that they have a smaller house?
Yeah, it's something that we could consider. Perhaps the agent could speak to the requested lot coverage as well in relation to the design of the dwelling.
Was that discussed with the owner? Possibly
Yes, we
building
do
a
provide
smaller
them with
house?
the zoning regulations, but again, they are, free to propose their development proposal to be considered by staff and council.
What about the owner? Would they be okay with that?
We're going to find out.
Yeah, we would have to follow up with the owner, but the
Okay.
agent should be on the call, so perhaps you, Councillor Lubberts, can ask the agent to see what their thoughts are on that proposal.
Okay.
Yeah, I would prefer that because even though it's a smaller lot, if we're gonna do that, at least everything would be proportional. Bigger lots, bigger house, smaller lot, smaller house.
Okay, so this is an opportunity for questions. You get a chance to make your comments later, but the agent will be coming forward, so you can ask the agent about the size of the proposed building, and Councillor Noyes can as well.
Yeah, all right.
Okay? Any other councillors? All right, so then we'll go to the proponent or the agent for the property owner for comments.
Your Worship, we have Lee White, planner for the owner joining us.
Okay? Good evening, Mr. White.
Good evening. Thanks very much, Your Worship. And if I could share my screen, I do have a brief presentation that I promise I will keep relatively short. Okay, can you see that now, Aaron?
Not yet.
We
Okay.
can't see.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, thanks very much. And the name again is Lee White, representing Dave and Charlene Smith, who currently live at 57 Idlewild. It's long been their desire to keep this second parcel as a potential retirement so that they could basically stay in the same neighborhood. So they'd be looking for a smaller house and looking for one that is one story that would be able to allow them to age in place over the long term. And certainly looking forward to moving forward with this development. As Daryl had mentioned in his presentation, that this is an area that has an existing plan of subdivision. And unlike most applications where we're doing a consent to sever a lot off of a larger parcel, here we're actually merging a full lot and a part lot to make it more in compliance with the zoning bylaw than the current lot structure currently is. And one thing that we did take a great deal of effort for that I do want to mention here, with the placing of the house, we understand that it's a total of around 1,500 square feet, including the garage. But we do comply with side yards on both sides, the front yard and the rear yard. So it's not as if we're really crowding any other neighbors or adjacent properties or anything. So I certainly think that it can be justified in the circumstance. So again, seeking the zoning bylaw amendment to put these one full lot and the part lot together to deem them to no longer be a subdivision and make a lot that is more in compliance than the current lot structure is, to allow facilitate the construction of one new single-family detached dwelling. As was mentioned, you've got 3 full lots and a part lot. We're basically going to leave the existing structure on 2 full lots, about 50 feet of frontage, and then allow for the construction of a new, smaller house on the 37 and a half feet of frontage from the full lot and the part lot. This is the Deeming Sketch that was provided with the survey. This one is a little bit closer right here. You can see here is the part lot right there. There's your full lot, and this would be the location of the house. Again, we do comply with side yards on both sides. The rear yard is compliant, as is the front yard. So we'd have the garage being right here and a porch in the front. So it's not a huge house by any means, and being one story, it's not, as I mentioned, it's not going to be crowding the neighborhood. And one thing that I will point out as we move a little bit further on is there is a fair amount of multifamily residential already in this neighborhood. And we are proposing a single family dwelling, which is a permitted use. So it just identifies the existing permitted uses. We've already seen this aerial here with the existing house and the large side yard to the west. You're familiar with the location. Here's a lot of the other uses these are all within 120 meters. You've got institutional uses with Sugar Bowl Park, Gilmore Lodge, and St. Paul's Church, the industrial facility to the south, commercial. You've got vacant Knights of Columbus Hall, Fike Trading to the east. There's a fair amount of multifamily residential for this neighborhood, as well as right on Idlewild, as well as the large development that is to the south. So beyond the 120 meters, we've got the larger multifamily residential, the school, commercial development as we get closer to Central Avenue and the public library. Here's the zoning for the area. You can see the parcel is zoned R2, but you see that there's a whole bunch of other zoning in the area, including the RM2 to the south, which is basically across the street. You've got R3, which is a higher density residential right across the street from this parcel. You've got site-specific R3 2 doors down from where we are, R3 and RM2, which is residential multiple, further to the west as well. So it's certainly not going to be totally inconsistent with the character of the community. It will be a smaller lot than the majority of the other ones, but I don't think that it will be so significantly different that it will result in an obvious eyesore or change. The secondary plan does permit for low-density residential, which we would be. And here, as we had mentioned, what we're looking for is the deviation from the lot frontage, the lot area, and the coverage. But I certainly believe, as a registered professional planner, that maintaining all of the yards is where that compliance is the most important to me as a planner, because that's where you would have negative externalities on your neighbor if you're going to be crowding or too close. And again, it's a one-story structure, which will be a little more diminutive than what could be permitted as a two-story. But the rationale behind deciding to do the larger footprint and the one-story is that this is going to be the retirement home, and they want all of their living space on the main floor. So all of these planning justification report was prepared and did give consideration to the provincial, regional, and town planning documents and the secondary plan as well. And open to questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. White. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, and Mr. White, thank you very much. And I guess you heard my comments earlier, so can you go back to your slide with the that shows the proposed and the required side yard and setbacks?
Did you want the actual?
Yeah,
graph?
second, it was right near the end of what you had.
I think he's referring to the plot plan.
Did you want the matrix or the actual?
Could you show the side yard setbacks, I think, and they meet, I'm assuming that's what, they meet the zoning bylaw for side yard setback. What about the rear and the front?
Yes, they all comply. The front, the rear, and both side yards do comply.
Oh, all right. Okay, thanks.
Any other councillors? Mr. White, just to get back to this, the size of the lot and the proposed lot coverage. So this is the smallest, looking at the report that was provided to us by staff, this will be the smallest parcel by far among the other 20 whatever comparator lots we've been provided information on. And the request is to reduce the lot size by about 35%, and yet increase the lot coverage by about 30%, from 30% lot coverage to basically 40% lot coverage, 30% increase. Has there been any discussion with the owners, since they are looking at constructing a smaller house, about building a house that actually would comply with the lot coverage criteria?
There has been some discussion of that. It would be substantially smaller, basically three quarters of the size of what's currently proposed. So you'd be looking at 1,200 square feet, and to include a garage with that, you'd have maybe 700 or 800 square feet of living space, which is probably a third of what they've currently got in their existing house adjacent to this. And I think a house of that size would be quite a bit different from what is already existing on the street itself. And I think, given that we do have R3 across the street, we may have larger parcels, but they're far more densely populated because we've got a lot of duplexes and residential multiple lots that are in this area.
Well, across the street, way down the street would be a senior's residence. And across the street on the north side of Idlewild, there'd be a couple of duplexes, and I think we've approved another duplex to be constructed. But of the 24 comparators that we've been given, which includes this lot if it's created, 6 are have lot coverage that's larger than what the bylaw permits. All the rest have less, some significantly less. So it's a matter of what fits in with the neighborhood. In fact, the current property that's owned by your clients, once the severance is approved, if it's approved, will also have a house that exceeds the lot coverage criterion for this particular zoning. So that's something that's a matter of concern. The only reason it's been raised is because in other more recent applications of this nature, council has been somewhat vigilant in expressing a concern that the houses should actually fit the new lots that are being created. And that there are numerous incidents of that recently. I don't have any other questions. Any other questions by members of council? If not, then thank you very much, Mr. White. We're going to go to the public and see if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application, of course, other than the applicants. And Mr. Butler, you'll keep an eye out for that?
Thanks, Your Worship. So if any members of the public that are here wish to speak in favor of this application, now would be the time to raise your virtual hand using the Zoom meeting functions.
Are you seeing anyone?
I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Okay, well then let's ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or who wishes to address council or has questions regarding the application.
So again, now would be the time to raise your virtual hand if you're in the attendee area in the waiting room, wish to speak in opposition to the application or have any questions of council. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
Okay, then I'm going to go to the clerk in the event she's received any correspondence with respect to the application since the report was published.
No, I have not, Your Worship.
Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move to the next public meeting, which relates to 321 Garrison Road. It's a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. And Ms. Anamika Dilwaria will be the Senior Development Planner who's going to provide council with some background information. Good evening, Ms. Dilwaria.
Good evening, Your Worship. With your permission, I would like to share my screen.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. An application for an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment has been submitted by Rob Russell, who represents Rakib Hassan, and Peter Wangler, the applicant and the owner for the subject property known as 321 Garrison Road. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the redevelopment of the front portion of the property for a restaurant and a drive-through facility. Notification for tonight's public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of Planning Act by placing a notice in the October 21st, 2021 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of the complete application and public meeting on the same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject lands and the surrounding neighborhood. The subject lands are located on the north side of Garrison Road, between Concession Road and Mather Boulevard. Mather Boulevard. Subject lands are located within urban area in the Walden neighborhood of the town. This slide shows the location of the subject lands. The subject lands are located on the north side of Garrison Road and currently contain a vacant commercial building known as 321 Garrison Road. A wooded area and single detached dwellings are located to the north. Garrison Road and commercial establishments are located to the south. Abutting land to the east are under construction for a commercial plaza and Canadian Tire gas station, along with other commercial establishments are located further east. To the west is McDonald Restaurant and Concession Road. This slide shows the current official plan designation for the subject property. The subject lands are designated core mixed use in part, medium density in part, and open space in part on Schedule A of the official plan and in the Gateway secondary plan. The lands designated core mixed use allow commercial development. However, the lands designated medium density allow multi-residential development. The applicant is requesting to redesignate approximately 930 square meters of medium density residential to core mixed use to allow the proposed restaurant with a drive-through facility. No changes are proposed to the open space designation. This slide shows the current zoning of the property. The subject lands are currently zoned CMU 1447, RM 1446, and open space OS 450. The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 930 square meters from RM 1446 to CMU 1447 to facilitate the proposed commercial development. No changes are proposed to the land zoned open space. This slide shows the proposed development. The applicant is proposing to redevelop the existing vacant commercial building for a restaurant with a drive-through facility. In order to facilitate the proposed development, the applicant is proposing to redesignate the portion of the subject lands shown as hatched from medium density residential to core mixed use, and rezone the lands from residential multiple 1446 zone to core mixed use 1447 zone. The portion of the property subject to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment is already paved and was used as a parking area in the past. The proposal complies with all the zoning regulations of CMU zone like parking and building setbacks. Currently, the northern portion of the property is wooded and is identified as environmental conservation area on Schedule C of the regional official plan. However, the wooded area is not identified on the town's official plan as a significant natural area. To satisfy a regional policy, the applicant is proposing to add an environmental conservation EC overlay zone to the northern portion of the property until a detailed environmental impact study is carried out at the time of a future residential development application. This slide shows the subject property and the official plan as subject to the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. The property north of the paved area will not be impacted by the proposed development and will be maintained in its natural state until the lands are developed for residential development in future and EIS is completed to the satisfaction of the region. So this would be the limit of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Public information open house meeting was held on October 20th, 2021 and was attended by staff, applicant, and his agent. None of the area residents attended the meeting. Staff has received 2 emails from the area resident. One email is from the abutting easterly landowner requesting an installation of fence for the portion of common easterly lot line that is subject to the current application. As the proposed development will be subject to site plan control, the residents' request for the installation of fence along a portion of the easterly lot line can be addressed at the site plan stage. Further, the staff has discussed the request with the applicant and he is agreeable to installing the fence. Staff has also received another email from the area resident expressing concern regarding the additional traffic generated by the proposed restaurant and speeding on Garrison and Concession Road. As part of the complete application, regional staff did not request a traffic impact study. The speeding concern on Garrison Road and Concession Road is an ongoing concern. However, from the staff perspective, the speeding issue is an enforcement issue and is not triggered by the proposed development. Here are some pictures of the subject property. Looking at the subject property, looking south on Garrison Road, looking east on Garrison Road, looking west on Garrison Road, and that concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Delwario. Do any members of council have any questions? I just have a couple of questions, if I might. So the reason that the owner of the property needs to rezone part of the parcel that's designated or zoned residential is to facilitate the queuing for the drive-through?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And our requirement for a drive-through is that the facility should be able to stack how many cars?
10 cars.
And how is that number calculated? Is that based on the size of the facility?
Your worship, that number is standard for any drive-through facility. And I believe that number, we came to that number because we did not want any traffic, in order to have the safety of the pedestrians and the vehicular traffic. And in case we don't proceed with this official plan amendment, the applicant would only be able to provide five cars in the stacking lane. And that may create stacking on Garrison Road, which is a regional road, and may create traffic issues.
My understanding is that there probably aren't enough parking spaces either unless the zoning amendment is approved. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So it's a combination of this parcel not being large enough to accommodate the parking and the drive-through.
That's correct.
Are there other incidents, other occasions where we have rezoned residential to commercial recently? I thought we had a surplus of commercial property.
It's not coming to my mind when we have rezoned commercial to residential.
Well, I'm thinking residential to commercial, which is what's being proposed
Residential
here.
to commercial.
Okay, and in terms of drive-through, is that an automatic permitted use, or is that something that, in the zoning, or is that something that we, as a council, have any control over?
It's a permitted use for the property which is zoned CMU1.
The challenge here is that it may be a permitted use, but the size of the parcel doesn't, the size of the zoned commercial area doesn't allow that type of use unless the amendment is approved. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And then I had one other question. At the very north of this parcel, on the aerial photograph, there's what looks like a laneway that runs east-west from Concession Road over to the neighborhood to the east. Is that owned by the municipality?
I don't think so. I believe that's owned by the abutting owner to the east.
Because if one looks at the aerial, I don't know if you can put it up.
Sure. Give me a...
Well, even that's good enough. Actually, if you go back a couple, although, yeah, so you can see, that's right. So there's the laneway.
Yeah.
And then between 232 and 228, there's an open space. It almost looks like a road allowance.
Yeah. I believe you're right, Your Worship. This may be owned by the municipality.
So that would be presumably one of the access points if the residential development were ever to occur on the balance of those lands. Okay, we can get some clarification on that in any event between now and the recommendation report, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Thank you. Those are all the questions that I have. Any other questions by members of council? If not, then we're going to proceed to hear from the proponent or the proponent's agent.
Your Worship, I'm going to bring in the proponent's planner, Rob Russell.
Okay.
Mr. Russell, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Mr. Russell.
Good evening, Your Worship, members of committee. As stated, my name is Rob Russell. I'm with Robert Russell Planning Consultants, and I'm the authorized agent on behalf of the owner and applicant for this property. I want to thank Ms. Deloria. It was a very informative and a fairly complete presentation. I just have a few extra things I want to add. And really just to kind of look at a more comprehensive way at this site, where although there were questions about the fact that we are rezoning and redesignating residential lands to commercial, it should be noted that this was already a commercial parking area. we're not expanding the commercial parking area. It was once approved as a commercial parking area. I haven't looked at the official plan schedules prior to the Gateway Secondary Plan, but I would have to surmise that at one point these lands were designated commercial and they were redesignated for residential, most likely through the Gateway Secondary Plan. So it's not so much that we're taking away residential, it's that we're really we're trying to use what's there already. We're trying to make an efficient use of a building that's there. We're not proposing any construction on the building, and efficient use of the parking area that's already there. In fact, we'll actually be removing a little bit of asphalt, and this is more on the site plan side of things, but we're in terms of we're increasing the amount of pervious surfaces, so the situation, this property will be improved through this process because we will actually be removing some asphalt, but at the same time, it is already there. But I'd be happy to answer any more questions, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Russell, and that's helpful. I'd meant to ask that question because it looks from the aerial that was paved in any event. Are there any members of council that have questions? Councillor Lubberts.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just one question, Mr. Russell. I'm assuming that from what I'm seeing here that all the entrance and exit will always be on Garrison Road. We're not going to exit off onto the residential area of Walden, right? You're not going to have any access to Walden, right? Everything will be off Garrison Road?
Through your worship to the councillor, that's correct. Through this application process, we are only proposing to use that existing access that's already there. At some point in the future, long term, there'll be some form of development at the back, potentially, depending on the results of any future environmental studies. But that's an issue that would have to be looked at that time. But right now, there is no thought at all to creating a new access to the north.
And your plan is to maintain the back portion or the north portion of the property as woodland, treed area, conservation area? Is that your plan?
So through again, your worship to the councillor, it's we're putting, as part of this zoning process, we're going to put an environmental conservation overlay on it. So it would be protected. However, we're not proposing to change what the town designated under the Gateway Secondary Plan. So the town did decide this should be residential. However, we haven't looked at the environmental issues and we don't want to look at them, and we're not wanting to do any residential development this time. So there will be a protection on it. We're not planning to do anything with the trees. We are doing a 5-meter strip where we are removing some invasive species. This is at the request of the Conservation Authority and the region, where we improve the edge of the trees to potentially help the overall health of that woodlot. But the future fate of that woodlot is yet to be determined. There's some conflicting, conflicting ideas out there. One is that the town had designated this for residential. The other is, yes, there are some natural features there, and that is a discussion that's going to have to happen when something comes forward for that north half of the property.
Councillor Lubberts.
Okay, thank you. And just out of curiosity, how deep would that EC overlay be from Walden? Estimate. You don't have to.
My estimate would be, so the entire property is looking at 188 meters approximately, and we've got about 114 for the commercial zoning where we want to move the zoning boundary to. So quick math would show me that would be about 64 meters.
65 meters? 64?
Yeah, I believe so. Unless my math is way off.
All right, thank you.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Mr. Russell.
You're welcome.
So, Mr. Butler, we'll now go to hear from anyone who wishes to speak in support of the application, other than obviously the applicant.
Thanks, Your Worship. And so now, if there's anyone in the attendee area that wishes to speak in support of the application, as His Worship has stated, besides the applicant, now would be your time to raise your virtual hand. I'm seeing no hands raised, Your Worship.
Okay,
Excuse me, one was raised. I do see one now raised, Your Worship.
okay, so please bring that individual into the meeting.
Mr. Patel, you should be able to unmute yourself and share your video.
Yes.
Great, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mr. Patel. May I have your, we can see your name. May I have your address as well for the record, please?
315 Garrison Road.
Please proceed.
Your Lordship, thanks for letting me join and the members of the council. I'm in support of this application, and I just want to say thanks to my neighbor for having that separation, agreeing to build that separation wall for this development. And I'm really grateful and thankful for that. I'm in support of this application.
Thank you. Do any members of council have any questions of Mr. Patel? No. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Butler, do you want to ask in case there's anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of the application?
Thanks, Your Worship, I will. If there's any others in the attendee area that wish to speak in favor of the application, now would be your time to raise your virtual hand. And I'm seeing no others, Your Worship.
Okay, then I'm going to ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application or who wishes to ask questions of members of council.
So again, now would be the time to raise your virtual hand if there's anyone else in the attendee area that wishes to speak. I'm seeing none, Your Worship.
And I'll go then to the clerk, who I understand maybe has received something from the public.
Yes, Your Worship, we have received a written submission. It comes from Nancy Huffak. She submitted it with comments on behalf of her mother, Milika Dubanow, to Annemiek Delbarrier, and I'll read it out to you. Good morning. My mom, Milika Dubanow, had spoken to Aaron Butler about her concerns about the new restaurant going in. She was asked to send an email with her concerns to you. My apologies for not getting this to you sooner, but we are hoping that this can get addressed at the November 15th meeting. Her main concern and question is what is being done to make sure the additional traffic that will be generated by another restaurant with drive-through is being addressed. Currently, the traffic in this area is quite heavy as it is two main intersections in Fort Erie. We watch the traffic coming out of McDonald's and the entrance road to Sobeys and are surprised there hasn't been a fatality yet. The volume on Garrison Road is increasing as well. I'm not sure, but I had seen that it was a Popeyes going in there. It is also a favorite of many, and it will generate more traffic in and out. She lives at the corner of Garrison and Concession, so she sees the traffic and is just concerned and wants to make sure there is a plan in place to deal with additional traffic. She can be reached at, and their number is here, or you can reply to this email. If any clarification is necessary, please let me know. Could you please let me know that you have received this? Thanks in advance. Nancy Huffak.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. Were there any other communications on this
For your
file?
worship.
Thank you. So I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we'll deal with both of these through the information reports later on our agenda. That then takes us to the consent agenda. Could I have a mover for the reports contained therein? Councillor Butler? Are there any questions or comments about any of the reports in the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes?
I just wanted to comment on the Bay Beach in regards to the income that was generated, and considering we went through COVID and we had restrictions, it was a fairly good year for Bay Beach. It'd be interesting when we have a full year without COVID, what the revenue will generate. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think the message that was subliminally being transmitted is that despite the fact that there were capacity limits placed on the beach, that did enhance the experience quite serendipitously, and that maybe we should be considering some type of capacity limit going forward, again, to make it a more enjoyable experience for those who go to the beach. And I liked the recommendation regarding some type of priority for residents, which was something I'm sure we all heard about. Are there any other questions or comments about the reports? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just a comment and a couple questions. Actually, I thought this was a very good report. I really liked the idea of pre-purchasing tickets, especially for out-of-towners, so they wouldn't be turned away. My one question is, with regard to pre-purchasing of tickets, I'm assuming that would be non-refundable, though. I'm actually hoping it would be non-refundable.
You mean if you buy the ticket and you don't show up, you don't get your money back?
Or if it rains, then you don't get your money back.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Mr. Walsh, would you be able to respond to that? I'm presuming it's not refundable.
We haven't delved into those details yet. We will be looking into it over the next couple of months and hopefully in February or March come back to council with a report on go forward actions. But your comments are noted, Councillor.
So the alternative would be some type of rain check policy, I suppose. But then you've got to monitor that, and then you've got to... Anyways, Councillor Zanko, you still have the floor.
Yes, thank you. And my second question and comment actually is with regard to the Crystal Beach waterfront boat launch. I'm wondering if we've considered paid for parking there. I'm hearing and seeing what's happening there is a lot of cars are parking in the boater spot and the parking lot becomes full, which means the boaters have to, well, they're turned away basically because they don't have a spot to park their trailer and their car, forcing them to go to Port Colborne Marina, which then the town loses that revenue for the launch tickets. So I'm just wondering if there's been any consideration or any review done regarding that parking lot.
Technically speaking, you're somewhat out of order on this, but I think it's an interesting comment because it does relate to parking, and this report does speak to parking revenue. So, Mr. Walsh, any comments with respect to how we manage the traffic at Bay Beach? It has been, as people have been, at the Crystal Beach Waterfront Park for the, particularly when it's being utilized by boaters, number one and number two, when there's an overflow from Bay Beach, sometimes people are heading towards the small beach by the boat launch and parking in the parking lot.
We did bring forward a report, I believe, earlier this year, much earlier this year, on the operations of that parking lot. And essentially, for this year at least, it was status quo. There seems to be a misconception. The fee that's charged there is a boat launch fee. The parking is free for that particular lot. I understand the concerns there. There are a number of competing priorities in it. One of them is if we were to turn it into a parking fee during events in the park, it may drive parking into the surrounding neighborhoods that are already have very narrow streets. So it's a difficult situation. It's almost a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation down there. But we're always monitoring the situation to see if we can make it better.
Councillor Zanko?
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I got a couple questions on both reports. As far as Bay Beach, I'm wondering, I know there was a lot of people that were asking about preference given to local residents to make sure that they're not turned away. And I like the idea of making that recommendation in the report. But I'm wondering if we can put that on our website somehow at the Bay Beach so that people that are looking for Bay Beach specifically see that that's what we're going to do. I don't know that everybody in town is going to read this report and see that that's going to happen. So I'm just wondering if we could do that through staff on Let's Talk Fort Erie or wherever it is that we got information on Bay Beach.
Well, that hasn't been adopted yet, but if that were, that's one of the considerations that staff has in mind right now. So when that comes forward with a further report, if we adopt those recommendations, that would be part of what is put out on our website and on our social media.
Okay, thank you. And then, can we speak on the other report?
Of course.
The outdoor public. On page 3 of that report, first paragraph, it says that we're going to give some additional hours towards snow removal at other parking lots. But when I'm reading through here, I'm not seeing, if you read further, you'll see the names of some of the other parking lots. And I don't see Waterfront Park in there. And I know I've asked in different occasions about having the snow removed there, because there's a lot of people that use that parking lot in the winter to have lunch and coffee and use the park. So I don't know if it's on our list now, but if it isn't, I'd like to see that that parking lot be have snow removal as well.
Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Mayor, I'll look into that. I was under the understanding that Waterfront Park is on our clearing list already.
Yeah, if it's not, I think, it is a location where people would go, so I think that would be appropriate. Councillor Lubberts, anything further?
No, that was it. Thanks, Mayor Redekop.
Any other members of council? If not, then I'm going to call the question with respect to the consent agenda. All those in favor? None opposed. That is carried. That then takes us to corporate and community services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Worship. Corporate Community Services is now in session. Could I get a mover for the proposed administrative improvements to the short-term rental program and options for short-term rentals with more than 3 bedrooms? Councillor Dubanow. So we're going to move along. Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, so just along with that, I would like to also move that option 3 be the option considered with respect to those short-term rentals with more than 3 bedrooms.
But we're not there yet. We're going through the council directs that commencing January 4th, and we're doing A, B, C, and D separately.
You didn't make that clear, and you asked for the report to be moved.
Sorry, Your Worship.
Yeah. No, it's quite all right. When we get there, Councillor McDermott, I'll certainly follow your lead. When we get there, I'd ask that you recognize me so that I can put that forward.
Thank you. So, somebody want to move A, please? Your Worship. Any comments or questions about item A, which is a local contact person for short-term rental premises shall be at the premises within 30 minutes of contact? No comments or questions? Okay, so all in favor? Was it any? Carried. Could I get a mover for B, please? Councillor Dubanow? So this is as part of the short-term rental license application, the owner shall acknowledge and agree to indemnify and save harmless the town of Port Erie, its staff, and elected officials from any and all claims. Any comments or questions? All in favor? Carried. Mover for C, please. Councillor Zanko? As part of the short-term rental license application, the owner shall acknowledge that the issuance of a short-term rental license shall not contravene an agreement and purchase and sale and/or any other instrument registered on title or otherwise to the property. Any comments or questions with regards to that? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. And could I get a mover for D, please? Councillor Lubberts. The term good standing shall be defined in report number EDTS 05-2021. Comments or questions? Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I looked at the report that we had from October 4th, EDTS 04-2021, and I looked at the penalties in the table for the penalties, and I'm just wondering, when I looked at that, our this here is saying that good standing would be if you comply with all of the requirements of the bylaw, but there's some things that I feel that sometimes the owner's not going to be responsible for. For instance, if he gets some demerit points for having his garbage can lids off the garbage, or if his tenants let somebody sleep in the front yard. I know it's in violation of the bylaw, and therefore, if he gets charged with that, he's going to get 3 demerit points. And but sometimes the owner has no control over that because they can't be at the property, day to day. So I'm wondering if we can allow maybe you're in good standing as long as you don't have more than 5 demerit points or something like that. That way you can have a violation here or there, but because as soon as you get a violation, you're out of good standing.
Well, how about we ask Ms. Grummett a question on this one? Ms. Grummett, you're following this, right? So could you answer Councillor Lubberts' concern here?
Sure. Thanks, Chair. Through you to the councillor. The way it's positioned right now is that if
I can't hear.
Just 1 second. Can you get closer to the mic, Carolee, please?
Sure. Is this better?
Not really.
No, just...
Like everyone else does.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I've got my microphone all the way up.
Okay, there you go. Just stay right up there. We'll be good.
Okay. Sorry about that. So the way that if a short-term rental operator does receive demerit points and they're not at the 15 maximum threshold, then they will be considered in good standing as long as all of their fines are paid. So as it stands right now, a short-term rental operator could receive demerit points if they pay the administrative penalty and they're below that 15 threshold, then they'll be considered in good standing. It's when they reach that 15 demerit point threshold that their license will be suspended.
Councillor
And they
Lubberts?
would,
Yeah, I get that, but I don't know that we should wait till they get to 15. I think that we should have a limit. Once you get to a certain point, then you're not in good standing. We shouldn't have to wait until they get to 15, because at 15, now your license is suspended or revoked. And I think, I don't know if I agree with that. I think it should be, I think there should be a limit. I'll let other councillors chime in on that, but I don't agree to wait till they get there.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Councillor Lubberts that I don't think we should wait until 15 demerit points, but also I'm a little confused by this report only because I thought we were waiting, in particular to this portion, I thought we were waiting until we had legal review.
Ms. Grummett?
through you to the councillor. So these were leftover administrative concerns that were raised by council at the October 4th meeting. So recommendations A through D were outstanding matters that weren't dealt with that evening. So we're just bringing them back And then the 3-bedroom matter, the options are being put forward based on the significant amount of feedback that we've received from short-term rental operators looking for clarity that have 4, 5, 6 bedrooms if council would consider options. So this is separate from the legal report or the legal advice that's coming forward on land use controls. And I believe that that will come forward to council in December. So it's 2 separate matters.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with you on a portion of that, and with respect to the number of bedrooms that you're looking at us to make comment on, because the whole idea at the last council meeting was to place them as either a boutique inn or, and I can't remember the other section that we were categorizing them, and both of those would be considered by legal and zoning permits. And I don't know if I'm wrong by that, but that was my impression. So I'm kind of leery at the fact that we're looking at short-term rentals that have more than 3 bedrooms and categorizing them into a 3-bedroom and closing off doors. And what's to prevent them, if we go with option 3, what's to prevent anybody from using those extra bedrooms because they are there?
Councillor Butler, we're not speaking to that part right now. We're just speaking to D, the term good standing shall be defined. And then we go through the process of options.
Sorry.
It's okay. Do you have any other comments on the good standing?
No, I'm sorry. I thought we were doing the whole part of D. Sorry about that.
No, because I would have to go to the mayor because he's already piped up about that. Your worship.
You've restored my faith in good chairmanship, Councillor McDermott. Just speaking to good standing, I'm not sure that I necessarily agree with the interpretation. It seems to me that good standing typically means that you've complied with everything. It doesn't mean that you've complied with almost everything. And demerit points of 5 would suggest that you haven't complied. It seems to me that if we can't be sucking and blowing at the same time. If we're expecting people, and my recollection of the issue of good standing really related to individuals applying for renewal of license. And we had talked about you can apply, you'd be first in line to apply for renewal, provided you've complied with all the rules and regulations. And if you've complied with all the rules and regulations, in my view, you're in good standing. If you haven't, you're not necessarily in good standing. That doesn't mean you can't get a license. It just means that you're not first in line. Now, I'm not sure if that covers the entire context of what good standing is supposed to be referring to. So that was one question I wanted clarified. Is there some other area that being in good standing benefits a short-term rental owner? And then number 2, I'd like to hear from the lawyer with respect to the meaning of good standing and whether having some demerit points means you're still in good standing.
So, Ms. Grummet, do you want to answer the first question, and then we'll pass up to Ms. Sturton when we get the second question?
Through you, Chair, to His Worship, yes, good standing is in the context of should council choose option 1 to grandfather in the 4, 5, 6-bedroom operators with the new approved rule for the max 3-bedroom. So it's just in that context of option 1. And also, to your point, the max 50 that can renew.
Your worship?
Yep, no, that's fine. So then could we just hear from
You can.
Mr.
So, Ms. Sturton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to His Worship. Good standing, I would suggest, does not have a prescribed legal meaning. So it would be open to council to permit a certain number of demerit points to be present or in existence without removing the good standing label. Alternatively, it can be interpreted as your worship has suggested, with namely the idea that everything must be complied with. So that really would be a decision for council, in my view, as it doesn't have a defined legal meaning.
So my
worship?
So my view, Chair, is if we're not going to have complies with all regulations, then we do need to set what good standing actually means. If it means 5 or fewer demerit points from the previous year, we would need to clarify that. And these people need to know this by January the 4th, because there are going to be renewals coming up, and then depending on what we do with the properties that have more than 3 bedrooms, they're going to need to know this. So,
So I guess then, Councillor, you had a question, right? So once we get all the questions asked on this point, then maybe you might want to amend what that exactly means. Because I'm kind of getting the drift that the reason that it's set out like this here is because from time to time, everybody makes mistakes. So you're right, though. So we're going to Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Actually, I was actually going to ask almost the same question as the mayor has, because on page 3 of 6, F, the top, where it basically says, in regards to the preferred licensing, in other words, if you have a license, it describes it as the first opportunity to renew a license by March 31st of the following year, provided they have complied with all rules during the previous year and further. So it doesn't really talk about good standing, it talks about complied with all the rules. So my question was, does that mean if they have any demerit points, they're no longer on the preferred list and they basically go in they apply like anybody else would without a preferred status? And I'm actually in favor of that, because I think that would then put the onus again on the owners to make sure that they are in compliance and that they take a very serious look at what's going on in their rental properties. Thank you.
So did you have a direct question to Ms. Grummett on this issue?
No, that was just.
Okay.
Buttons don't like me.
don't be beating up that button.
I think I understood Ms. Grummett's position on the good standing did mean that it wasn't based on the number of demerit points. It was based on whether they paid their fines, and they weren't up at the 15, if I'm paraphrasing a little bit there. So in other words, if someone had 14 demerit points, they would still be considered in good standing. They paid their fines. Ms. Grummett?
Ms. Grummett?
That's correct, yes.
I wouldn't agree with that.
Okay, so we'll hear everybody out and then we'll deal with this issue. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And through you, perhaps either Mr. Turner or Ms. Grummett could answer this question. Just going back to the theme of good standing and, whether whether the limit is 0 or whether we, give a little bit of a little bit of leeway. I'm just wondering if there's perhaps an average number. Because Councillor Lubberts raised a good point. You don't have your lids on your trash cans. You may get demerit points for that. Although that's kind of one of those one-off situations where, the mistake is made, you put the lid back on and then you move on. I don't want to find us in a situation where there's almost a theme of common infractions that we run into, that almost every operator runs into, and that we find ourselves in a situation where none of our operators are in good standing. So I'm just wondering if perhaps I get some clarification. Is there an average number of demerit points that operators have? Is it, the vast majority of them have no demerit points whatsoever, and it's just a handful that do? I'm just trying to get a better grasp here about how this works to make a decision going forward on what that number should be, if any.
Ms. Grummett?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, it's my understanding, I'm not sure if this number's changed in the last couple of weeks, but there's currently 9 properties that have demerit points. So it's a small handful.
That makes, and pardon me, Mr. Chair, if I may, that actually makes my position on this much easier. If it's only 9, that seems like a no-brainer to me. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate having the question answered.
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts, did you have your hand up? Yes. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, I managed to get that report up from October 4th under penalties. And the reason I brought this up was when I looked at the, the penalties, it seems that if you, like if you were ineligible to hold a license, is 5 demerit points, and then again, the garbage containers was 3 demerit points. So, and sleeping outside the accommodations, and then, you know, not having your license displayed in the, you know, properly, 3 demerit points, those kind of things. You know, sometimes that, you know, that license could get removed from a wall because of a tenant. So when the bylaw officer comes in and it's not there, now you get 3 demerit points. I get that you get the 3 demerit points, but that's why I say that if you have 5 or less demerit points, that means that you didn't violate anything that would be like I would think that would be abusive, like you didn't hit the officer, you didn't, you know, do something that was terribly wrong. But you did something that may not be in your control. And we know, everybody knows it in this town, there's days when my garbage can doesn't have its lid on either, you know, and I don't have control over that, but that's a demerit point. Now you're out of good standing, right? And I don't think that we should go that far so that you have to be perfect. We should allow some leeway, and the reason I said from 5 to 8, when I looked at the demerit points, 5 and 3 are pretty minor infractions. And then when you get more than 5, now you're looking at, you know, you did something, noise, nuisances, you know, your local contact person isn't available, right? Operating without a license, you know, that's all above 5 demerit points. So if you're below 4, 5, fine, you're still in good standing. And if you're above 5, then you're not in good standing. And that's the way I'd like to see it. And I guess we could get legal opinion on that, but from my understanding, good standing is something that you determine what good standing is. There's no standard rule that you have to be perfect in order to be in good standing. That's our decision.
Thank you. Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Zanko had her hand up, and I don't think she spoke yet.
Councillor Zanko?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I do agree with Councillor Lubberts. I have great concern if we were to allow 15 demerit points or 14 demerit points and still consider the owner to be in good standing. I think my main concern is that the complaints that we received with regard to noise and partying, that would essentially still allow that licensee to continue on and maybe have a couple of complaints of that nature. And I don't think we would be any farther ahead regarding the complaints concern. So I don't know if Councillor Lubberts was planning to move that 5 and under, but I just wanted to say I would support that. I think that is definitely fair. And I think that would alleviate a lot of the concern that we have regarding complaints. That's all. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just touching on what Councillor Lubberts said, I see where he's going with that, and I agree with the idea that there's a difference between the minor infractions related to the lids on trash cans, and believe me, Councillor Lubberts, I'm in the exact same boat. There's days where my trash cans don't have any lids on them at all. I mean, to err is human that way. But I'm just curious because hearing from Ms. Grummett that only 9 properties out of the 200 plus we have in town have demerit points, I'm just wondering if this is entering more of into a discretionary territory where we're running into situations where it's repeat offenders, where perhaps, by the time they get assigned the demerit points, it's already the 3rd time bylaw has been out there and we've given them chances to rectify it, and then they're finally being issued those points. I don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have the 3, 4, 5 times bylaw shows up and then finally says you're going to be charged. As far as I'm concerned, whether it's 3 points or 5, you've been given plenty of opportunity. You're now out of good standing, at least in my opinion. So I understand where Councillor Lubberts is coming from, and I agree with him, but I'm just wondering if perhaps we could get some clarification on the discretionary angle of that, because I'm surprised we only have 9 properties that have demerit points in town, considering some of the type of infractions we could run into. It sounds like it might be a little more discretionary, and perhaps that would make my decision a little easier on how we go with this, if I could get some clarification, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Sturton, you want to speak to this?
Pardon, Mr. Chair?
Do you want to speak to Councillor Dubanow's concern about the demerit points on discretionary? Our discretion?
My impression was that Councillor Dubanow's question was more procedural in nature. So if that's so, then perhaps I could defer to Ms. Grummett or Mr. Turner in relation to how the demerit points are being administered in practice.
Does that answer your question? Okay. Ms. Dolch? We'll give you a go.
Sorry, and in terms of your question, it was with regard to demerit points and how they're administered, right? And right now, what happens is if an infraction is called in or a complaint is called in by a complainant, the officer goes out to the site, confirms. Sometimes it's not the officers, it may be the police, the Niagara Regional Police that'll confirm, and then those demerit points are issued onto the property, and that's something that Kimberly would then use to determine those demerit points. So it's verified. It's not just necessarily a noise complaint. And then, for example, noise is more of a controversial one. If there's noise complaint issued and we go out and the noise really isn't a major offense, or it's something very minor, or they stop, we don't issue those demerit points in that instance. So it has to be a confirmed complaint, and that's when the demerit points are issued. So we do confirm everything before we issue those demerit points on record.
Thank you. Councillor Dubanow, you still have the floor.
No, actually, that helped clarify the situation for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so we'll go to the Councillor Noyes and then the mayor, and then we'll see where we're at.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. In regards to some of the questions that just came by, I'm wondering if Ms. Grummett can answer, if she has her list, if you know how many demerit points in those 9. Would any of those 9 be under the 5 threshold, or would they be over the 5 threshold?
Ms. Grummett?
I actually don't have that breakdown. I'm not sure if Ms. Dolch does.
I apologize, I don't either. I don't actually have that breakdown. We can, I can see if I can find out that information.
Thank you.
A few minutes.
Thank you. I don't know if that's going to change my my perspective anyway, but it'd be interesting to know if of those 9, only 1 is over the 5 demerit points type thing. I would still think, I tend to agree with Councillor Lubberts about the 5 demerit points, that there should be some leniency in regards to their preferred status in regards to relicensing. So I'm going to be okay with that. I don't particularly agree with the people sleeping outdoors and the owner didn't know. Well, you're supposed to know. But any of the demerit points, the owner can say, well, I didn't know. That's not what they told me. So I don't go for that, but I do agree that there are some infractions are much worse than others. So I think the 5, under 5 would be what I could support. I think that was there was another question, but not related to this, but related to the short-term rentals, but I'll wait till we deal with this particular issue. Thank you.
Your worship?
Sure, I'm just wondering, since the significance of good standing really only relates to the option that we choose, in other words, if we grandfather, it presumably good standing then becomes significant. Otherwise, I don't think that good standing has any particular significance, does it? Maybe Ms. Grummett could respond to that.
Ms. Grummett?
That's correct. You're right, Your Worship.
So I'm wondering whether we shouldn't defer the vote on D until after we figure out which option we're going to be supporting. Well, because if we don't choose option 1, then it really becomes a matter of insignificance.
Okay, Councillor Lubberts and then Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, I understand where Mayor Redekop's coming from, but when I brought it up at the last meeting, we were talking about if we could put people in for good standing. I've had some conversations with some of the people that have short-term rentals, and they're going to form their association. I assume they've already formed their corporation, and they have an organization, short-term rental corporation in town of Fort Erie. So in the conversations, my conversation with them was if we could somehow with them they could have their members and they could have a member in good standing status, and then the town of Fort Erie, if we had a member in good standing status, that way when people are looking to rent and looking for a short-term rental, they can look, and if they see that you're in good standing with the municipality and you're in good standing with the association, then that gives them peace of mind that they're renting off an operator that runs a good ship. That was my thinking of the whole thing. And the reason I said 5 demerit points is because when you look at the schedule, and I don't know if everybody has it in front of them, but 3 and 5 are pretty minor. So now, like noise nuisance, what Councillor Zanko was asking about, that's been increased from 5 to 10. So it looks like 5 demerit points would do, and I don't know. This is all new to everybody. So even if we went with option 1, you could still have in good standings because you're still going to have your demerit point system. It's not a matter of whether you got 3 bedrooms or 5 bedrooms or 8 bedrooms. If you got a violation, you're going to get demerit points. So I don't know that either option precludes us from putting in a good standing definition. But I'd like to put it on the floor anyway, Mr. Chair, that we change the definition of good standing and allow people with 5 or less demerit points to still be in good standing.
Your worship?
Well, so if that's on the floor as an amendment, then I'd just like to get some clarity. What is the penalty then for failing to comply with the fire safety plan? I've got, I think it's 5 demerit points. Is that correct?
Ms. Grummett?
No, that's been changed to 10 demerit points and an administrative penalty of $500.
Okay, so I don't have, actually, I've been looking around trying to find what the new schedule looks like. I really can't tell what 5 points means, but I do know that if I'm looking for somebody that's in good standing, I'm not looking for somebody that's almost complied with all the rules. I'm looking for somebody that's complied with all the rules. And in any event, that's not part of what we're deliberating because we haven't gotten to a point where we've agreed to provide this definition to the whatever organization or organizations might crop up for the short-term property owners. my view is that right now, the only thing good standing applies to will be the option that we choose, and if it's option one, it applies. If it's not option one, then it doesn't apply. And if the organizations want to know whether they're in good standing or not, the answer would be, if you've got a license, you're in good standing with our municipality. If you don't have a license and you had one, it's because it's been suspended or revoked, and therefore you're not in good standing. But otherwise, you've got a license. And technically, if you've got a license and you haven't had it suspended, you're still in good standing with the municipality, and you can still operate as a short-term rental property owner. So we're really confusing the issue here in terms of good standing. If it doesn't mean, if you've got a mortgage and your mortgage, your payments are paid up, you're in good standing. If you haven't paid your mortgage and you're in default, you're not in good standing. It's pretty basic. It's not, well, I've almost paid all my mortgage, so I should be in good standing. So I think we're making this very, very confusing and more difficult administratively. However, that's my view. I think we're just getting bogged down.
Mr. Chair, you get demerit points on your driver's license, but you still have your driver's license.
That's right.
Yeah, you still have your driver's license. You're still in good enough standing to drive a car. That's the whole idea. So option one, option two, option three, whatever option you get, even if you went to option two, you're still going to have the demerit point system. In option three, you're going to have a demerit point system. So you're going to have a good standing system in there. So if you're going to have good standing, you can't just say, well, if we go with option one, then good standing doesn't mean anything. Yeah, you still have it. Doesn't matter. You're going to have a demerit system. And your demerit system is, you're saying that you have to be perfect in order to maintain your status. And I'm saying that is not the standard. You don't have to have a perfect record. All you need to be is less than 5 demerit points, or 5 demerit points or less, whatever it is. You can still have the system and still be in good standing.
I just don't agree.
Okay. I'll just, Councillor Dubanow, and then I think we'll go back to Councillor Lubberts where he can propose his amendment, and then we can make up our mind.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see where Councillor Lubberts is coming from, but I think the mayor made the good point, or at least as far as this report is concerned this evening, the only thing we have to worry about is, as far as good standing is concerned, is depending on the option we pick for 4 bedrooms. If we grandfather, we have to do that. Now, having said that, I have nothing against Councillor Lubberts' idea. I think it's a good idea. It's just, this isn't necessarily the time to deal with it right now. We're getting bogged down by administrative issues here, and this conversation seems to be running around in circles. So I'm with the mayor on this. I don't think this is the appropriate time.
No, I understand that, but you know what? I want to be fair to all of the councillors, and if he wants to make his amendment, and you choose to disagree with that, you can vote against it. And then we can move on. Is that good with everybody? I think it's up to the chair to be fair, and I'm going to. So would you like to move your amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to make one last comment. You stated earlier that we're not at the option stage. We're going to go through A, B, C, D, and now we're at F. So we're not at those option stages yet. We're at F, and we're talking about the definition of good standing, and I'm going to maintain.
You're correct. We're at D, but
D,
you're absolutely
right. And I will
right.
maintain my motion.
Okay. So, any comments or questions with regards to the motion? Mayor Redekop? Did you want to talk to that, or do you just want to move on with it?
I just want to point out that the definition that's in the report says complied with all provisions of the business licensing bylaw. So, I understand what Councillor Lubberts wants to do. I just find it very confusing. This is manna to the lawyers.
Beg your pardon?
This is manna to the lawyers. This will be something that the lawyers can get, and then they can really tussle around.
Okay, I understand that, but I also understand that, you know, it's a point that the councillor wants to put forward. And I think it's only fair of us to all do that. So, any further comments or questions? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you. And I just wanted to clarify, if I could, through you, to Ms. Grummett, because perhaps I am confused, but I think in order to not be confused, I wanted to just pose a situation to see if I'm understanding this correctly. So if there's a property and they're a license holder and they've received a complaint that there's a big party, my question is, if they were to get a fine, one fine, would they be considered good standing? And they paid their fine.
Ms. Grummett?
As long as they do not reach that 15 demerit threshold, then yes, they will be considered good standing. We would not take action on revoking their license. It's once they reach 15 demerit points, it's an automatic suspension of their license, and then they have to go to a hearing officer to determine if their license should be revoked.
Okay, thank you. So, and that's why, to me, I feel that Councillor Lubberts' amendment would make sense. It allows, some infraction, but not the major infraction. My second question is, if the Niagara Regional Police Services do go out to a particular property that they've received a complaint on, are we getting a report the following day on that from the Niagara Regional Police Services?
Ms. Dodge?
Through to the councillor, yes, we're working with the Niagara Regional Police, and they provide the incident report number and advise us of the complaint they've attended. So we do issue demerit points based on their evidence. And if I may, just a bit further, I did clarify with Bryce, who handles our short-term rentals, and he has indicated that he believes at this point, he's not working right now, but that 8 of them would have over 5 demerit points and only 1 has 3. So if that helps as well.
Everybody heard that? Okay, and then I'm calling the question. Councillor Noyes?
I'm just listening to all this going around. So I just wanted some clarification. If you have a license, you're considered in good standing, according to the mayor's position. And so isn't this whole thing then redundant? Because if you have a license, you don't have to be in good standing because you have a license, so obviously you're in good standing. So I can see Councillor Lubberts' position that, you may be like, I don't think someone who has 13 or 14 demerit points is in good standing as compared to someone who has none or has less than 5. So I am in support of Councillor Lubberts' motion, and if otherwise it's just redundant anyway. If you have a license, you're in good standing. Doesn't matter what the demerit points are, you have a license. And again, this is only relates to, from what I understand, your preferred status in regards to getting your application for the following year. That's the only thing it applies to. No?
No, because you can't get your, if I might, Chair, you can't get your license in a priority position unless you've complied with all the rules. That's set out in subparagraph F that we approved on October the 4th. So this would relate specifically to the option that we select. And if we don't select option 1, it really doesn't mean anything.
So
now I am totally confused in regards to the good standing, in regards to the licensing. Again, I think the term good standing shall be defined in report number, whatever. So it does not, like on page 3, I think I started off with that. It says it doesn't talk about good standing. It talks about have complied with all rules during the previous year. So in other words, if they didn't comply with all the rules in the previous year, they obviously have demerit points. And I think Councillor Lubberts' position is that they may be able to not comply with all the rules, but most of the rules, and only have up to 5 demerit points.
So that's correct. And the mayor's brought that to our attention twice now this evening about how confusing that is, what it says on page 3 and what comes on to here. But nevertheless, we have a motion in front of us and we have to get to the meat of the act, which is next. So if we could vote on Councillor Lubberts' amendment. All in favor? Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Butler?
Could he just read that amendment, please? Because I'm a little confused by all of it now as well.
So you want the amendment? Is that what you're looking at? Because I can hardly hear you. Yeah.
Exactly what he wants amended.
Councillor Lubberts, you want to point out to Councillor Butler your amendment?
Yes, I want to move that any short-term rental owner that has 5 or less demerit points is considered in good standing.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Butler? Any further questions? All in favor of his amendment? Carried. Your worship.
So are we on to the options?
Yes, we are. Yep.
So
Oh,
I'd
I'm
like-
sorry. The council approved option number 1 through 3 for short-term
I
rentals.
think we have to vote on the amended subsection D. Subsection
yes, I'm
D as
sorry.
amended.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Any comments or questions to the amended version of that? Good standing? All in favor? Carried. Your worship.
Okay, so I'd like to move option 3 with respect to the premises that have more than 3 bedrooms.
Would you like to speak to that, sir?
Yeah, I would. I think that this is a challenging issue for a number of reasons. The first of which is if you've got a premise that's got more than 3 bedrooms and it's been previously licensed, how do you ensure that if it's authorized to rent just the 3 rooms, how do you monitor that? That's very challenging, and so to a great extent we're going to be reliant upon, if this passes, we're reliant upon the integrity and the honesty of the short-term rental owners. Option 3 requires them to block off the bedrooms. I would suggest that that should be amended to include that there be locks placed on the doors and that they be locked, which makes it much easier for the owner to be assured that when they're renting 3 bedrooms, that's how many bedrooms are being rented and not 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, up to 8. We opted to limit the number to 3 bedrooms because that appears to be what every other municipality has been doing. And as Councillor Butler quite correctly pointed out, if any property owner with a 4, 5, 6 or more bedroom house wishes to apply at some point, depending on what comes out of our zoning advice, wishes to apply for a zoning that would permit them to be a boutique hotel as an example, they may do that. And if it's integral for them to maintain the investment that they've put into the property to have this flow of people, well, then that's an option for them to pursue. We've heard from a fair number of, I'd say maybe a dozen property owners with more than 3 bedrooms, and they've pointed out, at least the ones that I've heard from, how they've complied with the rules. They've made sure that they've been managing their property. They take quite a deal of pride in ensuring that the people who are renting from them follow the rules, and I can't dispute that. I mean, it may very well be true, and the purpose of picking 3 bedrooms wasn't to punish anyone, and I made the comment on October the 4th when we dealt with this. The idea was to try to maintain a system that will meet a number of objectives in our municipality, one of which is ensuring that if people want to come to our municipality and they want to stay someplace here, which benefits our hospitality and tourism industry, that's great. We've got those facilities. On the other hand, we're talking about commercial operations in residential areas. And while some of these properties have historically been utilized for rental properties, that was on a somewhat less organized basis than it is now. Now this is truly an industry. We're talking about the digitization of rental premises, and that's part of this whole new economy. So we're trying to regulate that. And to my view, saying 3 bedrooms, 8 people, strikes a fair balance. And for those property owners with more than 3 bedrooms, this provides them the opportunity to continue to generate revenue, to continue to rent out their properties in compliance with our regulations. And if we get some zoning advice that suggests that there can be zoning amendment applications to permit something greater, then that would provide them with that alternative. But it seems to me that this is where other municipalities have gone. This is, I think, where we should go. We were given on October the 4th in the report an indication of what's happening in Niagara-on-the-Lake, what's happening in Niagara Falls, what's happening in a variety of other municipalities. They are looking at something beyond just short-term rental and 3 bedrooms. They're looking at other classifications which would require the owners to comply with a higher standard because there are more people. I mean, let's be serious. If you've got a property with 7 bedrooms, that's almost akin to a hotel. And it's great if those individuals are complying, if the owners are complying with all of the regulations and there have been no complaints, that's great. The problem is we've had some situations where it hasn't really worked out that way, and they happen to be mostly relative to some of the larger properties. That's not to say that you might be a property owner with 7-bedroom house, and you may be one of the best and most compliant individuals throughout this pilot project that we've had to date. But we have to establish rules, and my view is this is the most prudent rule and the one that tries to recognize to the greatest extent the fact that A, there is a market for this type of accommodation in our municipality. B, okay, people have made investments in these properties and we don't want to cut them off entirely. But C, these are commercial operations in residential areas, and we have to recognize D, the residents who live in our community. So I think we've heard it from all sides, and this is what I would support. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I am going to speak to this, but I just had one quick question with regard to option 3, just off the get-go. It mentions that we would close off additional bedrooms and post appropriate signage on the doors. Would the intent be that those rooms be blocked off entirely? I'm just wondering if the doors are locked, if that could potentially be a safety issue if someone's trying to get out of the building, and I'm just wondering if perhaps maybe the fire chief might have a comment on potential safety issues if a room is blocked off.
Chief?
Through you to the council, Mr. Chair. We're not so concerned about the rooms being blocked off because the exits from the rooms that are being used via hallway or the windows, etc., that would be picked up in the inspections that council has already approved. The issue will come in is that the rooms being blocked off, if they are used, and this is just off the top of my head, but if they do get blocked off so they can't be used and it's an 8-bedroom house, what happens to the block off material when they know there's an inspection coming? Does it get in the way, et cetera, et cetera? But in the big picture, if we took a 3-bedroom house or an 8-bedroom house and turn it into 3 bedrooms, I wouldn't be concerned about their ability to escape because the fire inspection and their fire safety plan would pick all of that up.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate that response. Just going back to the wider issue of the options here, I'm a little concerned if we don't incorporate some form of grandfathering, and I'm not saying that we necessarily need to do this in perpetuity. The mayor and even Councillor Butler a little earlier raised a good point about how we may have a different zoning framework for this, whether it's a boutique hotel or an inn or something along those lines. My concern, having spoke with a number of operators who do operate short-term rentals with 4 or more bedrooms, is that many of them have already booked into 2022. And they've already, and they bookings well in advance. And my concern is, even if they do want to proceed with the new zoning framework, they're going to have a period where they're cut off, because we're not going to renew the license as a short-term rental. They're going to have to go through a zoning application process. That may take months, and they could find themselves, sitting duck for 2022 while waiting for that application to be heard by council. I think it is imperative that there be some, at least until we iron out what we're going to do with those 4-bedroom, whether it's boutique hotel, inn, whatever we decide to do. I think it's imperative that we have a method for those operators who have already have rentals booked for 2022 to take care of them and to have their back. I appreciate where the mayor's coming from with regard to the challenges of this issue and the many facets that we're dealing with. I also do appreciate that these are businesses, but regardless of the business, I wouldn't want to put any business owner in this kind of position, whether it be a short-term rental, whether it be a restaurant owner. I think we owe it to them until we have some method to allow them to operate with 4+ bedrooms, and how they do it, however that may be, that we grandfather. And if it's not going to be grandfathered in perpetuity, perhaps we grandfather for 1 year, or grandfather them until an application is heard, or something along those lines. But I think we owe it to them. And without a grandfathering option within here, and however we determine to do that, that's fine. But without some form of grandfathering to take care of these operators who, we had so many challenges with COVID. They've already booked, looking forward to a prosperous 2022. Hopefully this nightmare is past us. I don't want to be the guy to pull the rug out from underneath them. And as much as I understand that we have to look at this, and we may need to adjust that framework and define those definitions, I think they need to be taken care of until we get to that point. So I can support option 3, as long as there's a way we can kind of tie some way of option 1 into this. With no grandfathering at all, I cannot support this. It's just, I don't think it's fair to the operators who've invested in this. I think we need to figure out a way to take care of them and move forward. So thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes, and then Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I am going to support option 3 the way it stands. I understand Councillor Dubanow's concerns about grandfathering, but we are in, if we do it now, we're giving those who own 4, 5, 6, 7, 10-bedroom short-term rentals, they now have, let's say 6 months. Let's say they start to rent in May. They have 6 months to look at the alternatives and look at their options. So we are giving them a lead time. It's not like it's June that we're doing this, okay, that applies to July and August. I do think we're giving them a head start in regards to clarifying this and saying 3 bedrooms, 8 people, and then they can move forward and do what they need to do to make themselves either compliant or apply for, let's say, a boutique hotel or something different. So I am in support of this, and I do understand, but it is a commercial enterprise when they, when they have all these bedrooms, even 3 bedrooms, still a commercial enterprise. But I think we have to stick to the 3-bedroom and let them look at other options that would still allow them to, run their business, but run it as a business, not as a house. Thank you.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would support option 3, but just to follow up on what Councillor Dubanow was saying, we could, if council wanted, we could put in the, Councillor Dubanow could amend the option to read that starting the season of 2023, that it goes to 3 bedrooms, and then it would just be a simple amendment. But going back to the 3-bedroom issue, I guess I would be asking Carolee, if they're operating with, if they have, say, a 4-bedroom home and they are operating with the 4th bedroom and trying to sneak one by, which infraction would that fall under? Would that fall under the operating a short-term rental without conforming to municipal laws? 5 demerit points?
Ms. Grummett?
On October 18th, Councillor, the council passed a new penalty for operating with more than 3 bedrooms, and the demerit points are 15, and there's a penalty of $1,500. So that's what it would fall under.
Okay. All right. Okay, that answers my question.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see both sides of the coin, what the mayor has been saying and also what Councillor Dubanow has said. But, and I get that the owners of, these properties have made a huge investment, but I think we can't forget the fact that the residents in the area have also made a huge investment in their properties. And I don't believe that we should be grandfathering anybody in, or using the terminology rather of grandfathering. I think it denotes the fact that it would be in perpetuity, and I don't want that to be the case. I have huge concerns about the reliability of the owners having only the 3 bedrooms when they have 4, 6, 8, or how many they have, and keeping them locked. So I am concerned, and I'm not trying to take away from those owners that have done a phenomenal job in being outstanding. But that was the whole reason why we deferred that portion of it, so that we could get legal advice with respect to zoning and see if we were within the right bounds. I still believe that this should be deferred. This portion of it should be deferred, and I'm not supportive of moving forward with any option. Thank you.
So, Councillor Butler, do you want to move deferral of this portion?
I'm going to wait until all the councillors have had an opportunity. I saw Councillor Zanko's hand up.
Councillor Zanko, you're next.
Yes, thank you. I too understand both sides of the coin. And to Councillor Dubanow's point, I mean, I also feel for the operators that are in perfect standing. But the whole thing is, they really aren't considered as a business right now, and we're trying to get these properties to be more considered as a business. So I mean, it's definitely a tough one. I am in support of option 3. My question is, how much time is a reasonable time frame? Or I guess the question is, how much time will it take to get these properties to be able to convert into a commercial boutique style if they choose to? So to Councillor Noyes' point, is it a reasonable expectation to think that, from now till May, that's more than enough time for the property owners to be able to convert into a commercial property? I don't know who that should be directed to.
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. So if at this point in time we don't have any boutique hotels or anything like that permitted in the town of Fort Erie, if we did something like that, obviously a report come back to you to initiate something like that, then it would be a zoning amendment that the town, an official plan amendment, the town would go through to recognize those uses. They do have the option to go with a hotel, however, type use, and that's obviously permitted in our commercial zones. And they would have to redesignate through the official plan and rezone to permit a hotel, but they would have to meet the hotel definition that we currently have in our zoning bylaw. And generally that refers back to the Hotel Act. So that's something they could do. I'm just not sure they would qualify under that definition being a short-term rental. So that would be my concern. And that being said, if they had to wait for our zoning amendment, obviously it's going to take about 3-4 months once we get an initiation report from council, then they would have to also proceed with their own amendment should it be on parcels that aren't currently permitted. So if we recognize some areas that would allow commercial boutique hotels, they would obviously be permitted within that 3-4 month period. But however, if not, and it was an independent parcel, let's say on a residential piece, that they wanted to redesignate and rezone, they would have to go through a further amendment, which would be, again, 3-4 months from complete application. So in totality, it probably could be anywhere from 9 to, let's say 9 to 12 months if it was a residential piece.
Thank you.
Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just listening to what Kira just had to say, I'm wondering if we move forward with option 3, am I hearing that staff is going to come back with some kind of recommendation report for any short-term rental units above 3 bedrooms? And then come back with some kind of zoning options and stuff so that these property owners have some options and they can rezone, make their applications? Because if that's the case, if it isn't the case, I hope that maybe tonight we can direct staff to do that so that the property owners with more than 3 bedrooms have an opportunity to make application and they can get it as quick as possible, maybe not for the next season, but at least for 2023. I'm just asking the question. I don't know if that's was staff's plan or not, but I hope it sounds like that's what where we're headed, right?
I believe that's the way it's going. Ms. Dolch, you want to answer Councillor Lubberts' inquiry?
Sure, thank you. Through you to the councillor. That's correct. I provided some options in the previous report from October that we were looking into and getting a legal opinion. I will have a further report to council on those matters. In addition, council did ask that I meet with all those parties that spoke at that meeting that evening. So I do have meetings set up with them to go over the proposed zoning changes and get some discussion with them going. So I will report back on all of that to council.
Yes, so I hope that there's some short-term rental owners that were listening tonight so that they know that those options are still be available. And hopefully we can move forward, because just to make a comment on this whole thing, Mayor, Mr. Chair, this is new to the municipality. We have to start somewhere with some regulations and some rules and so this is a good starting point, I think. So let's get to a starting point, and then no different than Bay Beach. You know, we said we're going to operate this year. We're going to review it. Staff can come back next year and give us some options on how we can make some changes. And over a period of time, we'll have a good system that the short-term rental owners will be happy with, and council will be happy with, and business owners will be happy with. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm actually, Councillor Butler raised a good point about the phrase about grandfathering, because, you know, certainly I'm not averse to the idea of a sunset clause on this until we have a framework in place to allow the operators to apply. What I'd like to do is I'd like to move that we amend the option 3 to permit, hold on, I'm just looking here. To permit existing operators of 4 or more bedrooms to continue operating for 2022 pending the outcome of the zoning bylaw amendment and the official plan amendment that Ms. Dolch had mentioned. I think that would give them sufficient time to see where we're coming from, see what would be involved in that. They wouldn't have to cancel their 2022 current reservations that they have in place, and we would have a definite date knowing that we're going to move from 4+ bedroom short-term rentals into boutique hotels, or however we decide to define them. It just wouldn't pull the rug out from underneath them for 2022. So I'd like to move that, Mr. Chair.
So are there any comments or questions with regards to Councillor Dubanow's, Your Worship?
I'm not going to support the amendment. I appreciate the comments that have been made by Councillor Dubanow, and I know that, Chair, you and I chatted about this earlier today. And I'm also not agreeable to deferring this, simply because these property owners need to have an understanding of where they stand on January the 4th. Our previous deliberations established the system that would be effective January the 4th. So then, of course, anyone with a property of more than 3 bedrooms right now doesn't qualify to get a license. Staff was asked to tell us, well, okay, what could we do about those properties that have 4+ bedrooms? This is the answer, that we give them an opportunity to rent out the 3 bedrooms based on certain parameters. And in terms of the penalties, I know that Ms. Grummett had indicated that there are some municipalities that do allow the 3 bedrooms in houses that have more than 3 bedrooms. The owners have to undertake that they're not going to use more than the 3 bedrooms. They have to do certain things that are provided for. It does make it difficult to monitor, but if these are honest property owners, and the ones that have communicated with us have highlighted the fact that they've been honest and they've complied with the rules, they'll comply with these rules. So I really think that they need to know where they stand. I would point out that this has been a pilot project for 2 years. Pilot project. And as Councillor Lubberts has said, this is all new, and we're trying to figure out where we stand. Had I known 2 years ago that most of the other municipalities, if not all the other municipalities, have a 3-bedroom limit, that's where I would have thought we should have gone 2 years ago. Now it turns out that that's where we are. So I think that that's where we should be. What happens beyond tonight in terms of expanding, a property owner expanding the number of bedrooms he can rent to the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, that's for another day in my view. And Councillor Dubanow spoke about the prejudice suffered by those property owners. Yes, they will suffer a loss of revenue. But on the flip side, as I've pointed out to some of the people who've communicated with us by email, yeah, okay, so you've got 5 bedrooms that you can only rent out 3. That means that the party that was going to come to visit you is going to need to rent another short-term rental, which means that we're actually spreading some of the wealth. So that I see that as a silver lining. Interestingly enough, and I may hear from them now, I haven't necessarily heard from the individuals who've been leading the group of short-term property rental owners, because maybe they see the same thing that I see, which is greater opportunities for more people to actually rent their rooms out. In terms of monitoring, these people all advertise. And so if you've got 5 bedrooms and you're advertising that you've got a rental property in Fort Erie and you've got 5 bedrooms, that's a pretty easy clue for us to pursue. And so if we're going to be monitoring, and I think we've discussed monitoring the websites, if we're going to be monitoring this, that's a sure way that we can find out who maybe is fudging on this. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that most of these people will comply with the rules. So my preference is that we deal with it tonight, that we provide these property owners with the certainty that they need to know. Some of them will have rentals already booked, but they're going to have to confine those to the 3 bedrooms if option 3 is passed. So I'm not going to support the amendment. I would prefer to stick with the original option 3, and I would prefer that we deal with it tonight rather than defer it, simply because these people need to know. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Any more comments about the amendment? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, briefly, just to the mayor's point, I actually have heard personally from a number of short-term rental owners in this situation. So I mean, that's why I'm doing this here. I've already spoken up about my feelings on this matter. Mr. Chair, I would like a recorded vote on the amendment, though, if I can get that.
Okay, so there's no more comments, then we'll go to the recorded vote.
Councillor Lubberts.
No.
Councillor McDermott.
Yes.
Councillor Zanko.
No.
Councillor Butler.
No.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yes.
Councillor Noyes.
No.
Mayor Redekop.
No.
The amendment is lost.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So since everybody has talked, can I pass the chair over to Councillor Butler? You know, I find this whole matter the most perplexing thing that I've ever seen. And I have to admit, we've been through some pretty crazy issues during this term. And this is one that is for the books, to be honest. And I think that there's a lot of moving parts here, one being the fact that we have what we consider a commercial element in all over the city, but nobody's paying commercial taxes because the province of Ontario hasn't realized the fact that these are commercial elements and MPAC hasn't done a thing about it. So, you know, to call it a commercial, I can't call it a commercial entity until it actually is one. Now, I understand it's a business, I got that. And I also understand that there are a lot of short-term rentals that, you know, have done stellar work here in this community and provide services that not only do we need, but the businesses that are going to benefit by the fact that we have people here are going to lose out as well. So, you know, we sit here and we talk about these things, and I just, for the life of me, can't understand some of the stuff. Most of the people that own these places are local people. I believe that there's about 10 corporate groups that have short-term rentals here, but for the most part, these are local people that we're dealing with, our neighbors, the people that support our businesses. Now, I know tonight this isn't going to pass what I want, what I would like to see, but the fact of the matter is, I have to stand up for the folks that are going to lose out here, just like Councillor Dubanow did, because there are some very good people, stellar people in this community that live by the rules that are going to be punished in one way, shape, or form with this. No matter what anybody says around this table, they are. And some are going to be able to maintain the financial hardship they're going to get until we come to grips with zoning and planning issues that maybe or maybe not, they might be able to have an inn or a boutique hotel. We don't even know this. We're still we're a ways away from this. So I just, in all good faith to the business people in these areas that are lifted up by short-term rentals, I find it very difficult to vote for 3 on its own without some sort of payback for being good corporate citizens. If you want to call it a commercial entity, well, they're being good commercial entities. Many of them don't have any demerit points. Many of them run first-class businesses. You know, this is a problem that we haven't started. It started long before. I mean, this just popped up on us just like a lightning strike. But, you know, I'm just a small town councillor, and I have my small town thoughts about small town business and the commerce that we live by. And I've always been one of these guys that if you live by the rules, you should be benefited by that. And there shouldn't be a council in the world that could take that away from you. Because it just goes to show that if you play by the rules, if you run a first-class business, yeah, you don't always win out. But, I see this option 3 will pass tonight, but I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to comment on what I believe. So anyway, I thank you for that.
Well, no.
You're back
You
now.
spoke, so Councillor Butler keeps the chair.
Okay. Okay, so then, you'll have to forgive me, it's been a while since I've chaired. We're going to move to the next councillor, and I can't see the council chambers very well, so I don't know if anybody has their hand up. So,
Councillor Dubanow.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Butler, Madam Chair. Everything Councillor McDermott said times 2. I can't support this without an option to take care of those who we've already have operating. I'd like a recorded vote.
A recorded vote on what? We haven't, I don't think that anybody's put another option on the floor just yet.
No,
Option 3 is on the floor.
Yeah, and I'd like a recorded vote on that.
Okay, so who put option 3 on the floor? I'm sorry. Because I thought that Councillor McDermott just needed to speak to after this was defeated.
No, option 3 is on the floor. I had moved that, and Councillor McDermott spoke to that.
Okay, I see. All right. So option 3 then is on the floor. Did anybody want to speak to that before we
Madam
take?
Clerk,
Yes.
Councillor Butler.
Mayor, if you could remind me, I believe you made an amendment to your option 3 that you moved in order to include the door be locked. So we need to vote
Doors
on
be
the
locked.
amendment.
We need to vote on that.
We need to vote on the amendment first.
Did you hear
And
that,
then we
Councillor
can
Butler?
vote on the main motion.
I didn't
as
formally
amended.
move that we include that the doors be locked, but I think that should be part of the option if we're going to expect staff to enforce that. So I would move that. That it be included, so additional bedrooms, so close off additional bedrooms, post appropriate signage, and lock the doors.
That amendment is on the floor. Would anybody like to speak to that amendment?
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Butler.
Can't see you, I'm so sorry.
Okay. It's in regards to how this actually works out. So one of the options was to, okay, if you have 4 bedrooms and you take the bed out and you make it into a study, I don't particularly have a problem with that. The same thing if you make it into a yoga room or you make it into a weightlifting room. I don't know if we have to go to the extent of locks on the doors, as opposed to making sure like there's no bedding in that room. Because technically, you could lock every bedroom over 3 and they could sleep in the living room or they could sleep on the kitchen floor for all you know. So I don't necessarily think that you have to put locks on the doors, but there can't be any beds in the room, so to speak, no sleeping arrangements. So that's my comment. I'm interested in what the rest of the council has to say. To me, locks, I don't know whether we need to go that far.
Madam Chair, I'm prepared to withdraw that amendment. I think Councillor Noyes is correct, so I'm going to withdraw that. It'll just be option 3 as it appears in the report.
Okay, thank you. So that amendment is now removed and we have option 3 on the floor. Would anyone else like to speak to that? I can't see anybody in the chamber, council chambers, so I don't know if anybody else has their hands up.
Nope.
Yeah.
No?
Oh, sorry. Councillor Lubberts.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just to follow up on the mayor's comments, if he agrees with Councillor Noyes, then shouldn't we be moving option 2?
No, I agree not to have locks. I agree that they can close the doors on the bedrooms. I don't expect them to be turning around all of their rooms and turning them into something that may not be. So I think option 3.
Okay, so let's speak to option 3.
Okay.
Okay, nothing further, Councillor Lubberts?
No, that's fine.
Okay. And anybody else? Then I think that Councillor Dubanow had asked for a recorded vote.
Right.
Yes. So, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Councillor Lubberts? Yes.
Yes.
Councillor McDermott?
No.
Councillor Zanko?
Yes.
Councillor Butler?
No.
Councillor Dubanow?
No.
Councillor Noyes?
Yes.
Mayor Redekop?
Yes.
The vote carries.
Thank you. And just for direction, Madam Clerk, do I return the chair to Councillor McDermott, or do I continue with the
No,
final?
you turn the chair now.
Councillor Butler?
Yes, I return the chair back to you, Councillor McDermott.
Thanks so much. Are there any comments or questions with regards to the new business inquiries? Oh, I'm sorry, I have to go back and redo this. 1 second.
You have one more of that, Councillor.
I know, I got it. So to finish off that one, that council approves option number 3 for short-term rentals with more than 3 bedrooms as set out by page 5 of report number EDTS 05-2021. So we voted on that one. And we're going to need a motion for the last that. Thank you, Your Worship. The council directs that a bylaw be submitted to amend business licensing bylaw number 21705, schedule 13 accordingly. Comments or questions? Councillor Noyes.
This may be an out of order question. When did we discuss other issues that were in the narrative of the report that don't fall under all these that's?
Can I have that again?
When do we ask questions on the report that's before us in the narrative that don't necessarily fall under any of the that's?
Right now.
Right now? Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I have a question in regards to, there's a comment in here that says that each year when an application is filed, a new inspection, both fire and building, is required. And I'm just wondering how that will work with our staffing and in regards to timelines too, like how quickly when one applies does the inspection happen? And is that yearly? From the way I read it, that means every year when you apply for a license, you also have to apply for the 2 inspections. Am I correct on that?
Ms. Grummett?
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the councillor. So council approved the annual fire and building inspections and also the staffing resources to implement that as part of the 2022 budget deliberations. So exactly what that looks like right now is yet to be determined. We're discussing internally on what that process is going to look like. I don't know perhaps if the CAO would like to comment further.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes?
I can jump in quickly. Thank you, Chair. We are looking at the staff requirements to process these permits next year. It's been a very large strain on EDTS right now with processing the permits and doing the inspections for the building and the fire department. So moving forward, we're looking at hopefully there may be an easier process which may include a new employee that goes out and can do more than one inspection, can maybe look at preliminary inspections for the building and fire. And if there's a need be, then we send out fire and building, be it the chief or one of his inspectors and the CBO. So this is internal works right now. We're trying to figure out the best process.
I appreciate that, and thank you for the clarification. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? So, Your Worship, you're moving the last now. That council directs that a bylaw be submitted to amend business licensing bylaw number 21705, Schedule 13 accordingly. All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Are there any new business inquiries? Seeing none?
Councillor Butler has her hand up.
I'm sorry, Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, I haven't seen any reports from the SPCA in a while, and I wondered if anybody had any information with respect to that.
Mr. Cookett?
Yeah, through your chair to the councillor. So I believe you're referring to the monthly reports that we would get from the SPCA with their activities. And I've been receiving them, and I believe Ms. Dolch as well. Unfortunately, I haven't been forwarding them on. I just assumed that they were getting forwarded on, but with Paul no longer with us, I will forward on the last few months. I'll make sure of that, and moving forward, any new ones coming through, I'll make sure that you get those as well. I apologize for that.
No, that's okay. Thank you. I knew it was because Paul had is not able to do that anymore for us. So thank you.
Mr. Cookett, will that include the minutes of the meetings?
That'll include everything that gets circulated to us on a monthly basis.
Thank you. Is there anything else on the business status report? Or do you want to go back a step? Business status report? Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Just to follow up on that question, Mr. Cookett, are they not sending the minutes of the meeting every month or every meeting?
Through your chair to the councillor, we are receiving them. We haven't been forwarding them on. Paul was doing that, and now that Paul has left the...
Yeah, but don't they come in them on the agenda under correspondence from boards and committees?
Go ahead, Ms. Schofield.
If I may, the reports that the other councillor is referring to are the monthly reports, their statistics. You're speaking to the minutes, and yes, when the minutes come through, they do come in to receive.
I'll hand the chair back to you, George. Or, yes.
So we did new business inquiries, and you did ask about business status report. Councillor Lubberts puts his hand up, so no one else has any other questions. There's only one item. Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. In my view, you did an excellent job on a challenging subject. So that takes us to Planning and Development Services. Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship. Thank you very much. Planning and Development Services is now in session for the evening. We have no presentations or delegations this evening. However, we do have two reports. The first on the agenda is PDS 98-2021. That's proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 321 Garrison Road. Can I get a mover for that? Your Worship, that report is now on the floor for questions or comments from council. I saw His Worship first, and then I'll go to Councillor Noyes after.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to point out that I originally had some concerns about some aspects of this. Had a chance to speak with Ms. Dolch earlier today, and one of the things that struck me was that we've recently opened a couple of new restaurants on Garrison Road. They went through quite a process in terms of how to align their drive-throughs, and they had to be close to Garrison Road and what have you. This particular application is set back, and it's set back because the applicant is utilizing the existing building. So they're not changing the footprint whatsoever. That means that we're not in a position where we could require them to move closer to Garrison Road, which is what the Gateway Secondary Plan provides for. I'd also questioned the extent of the queuing And this is a narrow parcel. And because it's narrow, it really does create challenges for parking and what have you. Having heard the delegation, having heard what Ms. Dilwaria had to say in terms of the existing parking lot and what have you, I'm not so much concerned anymore about this, and so I'm prepared to support this. I don't want people to think that I would stand between them and Popeyes.
That's very good to know, Your Worship. I appreciate that. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. I have a concern in regards to that. Back on October 18th, I brought forth a motion or a concern regarding another site that the owner owns here in Stevensville, and that it's been under construction for quite some time with very little progress, if any, and that it's unsightly and it may even be dangerous. And I have concerns that this new site may have the same result in the same result. So I'm just wondering if we can postpone this application, because we're supposed to be getting a memo from staff regarding the site in Stevensville, until that memo on that site is brought back, just to see what it is. And I'm just wondering if, I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Dolch briefly about this, how this could go about.
Councillor Noyes, did you have a time that you wanted to propose it, or do you want me to check in with Ms. Dolch and see if she... Your Worship, you had your hand up. Did you have okay.
No, Ms. Dolch probably can speak to the timeline.
Ms. Dolch?
Thank you. Through you to the councillor. So the timing of our memo, we're hoping to come back in December with that memo to provide a response to Councillor Noyes at the council and committee meeting.
I did have a question.
Okay. Councillor Noyes, you have your postponement, but His Worship, is it a question related to this?
I will hold it in abeyance until the mayor's...
Your Worship.
It has to do, my thinking is that this property is probably going to change hands if this application is approved, and I'm wondering if we have any knowledge of that.
Ms. Dolch?
If I can, I'm going to defer that to Ms. Dilwaria. She's been in
Certainly.
contact with the applicants directly.
Yeah, Ms. Dilwaria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that the current owner is leasing this property. I'm not sure that he would be purchasing this property.
Okay.
He's just leasing it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I would still like to go forward with this postponement so we can get perhaps a little bit more clarification on what the owner's plans may be in regards to leasing or selling, whichever, but also, what's going on for his other sites. Thank you. So postpone it till December?
Yeah, Madam Clerk, when's our council and committee meeting in December?
6th.
6th?
That would be December 6th.
Ms. Dolch, would December 6th be sufficient?
Yes, Councillor Lubberts, or Councillor Dubanow, we can bring that forward on December 6th.
All right. So December 6th?
That works, thank you.
Okay. So Councillor Noyes has moved that we postpone this until December 6th. Are there any other questions or comments with regards to timing? Seeing none, so I'll call, just checking on Zoom here. So I'll call the question then. All those in favor? None opposed, so that carries. So that report has been postponed until December 6th. So that'll now move us on to our next report, PDS 99, 2021. That's the information report for the proposed zoning bylaw amendment 57 Idlewild Street and 0 Idlewild Street. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor McDermott. Any members of council have questions or comments? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. I do have some concerns about the lot coverage. I know that we've talked as a council that we want smaller houses, smaller lots, smaller houses. It seems that we're going the direction of smaller lots, same size houses. And I know that there's been one not that long ago, I think just a few weeks ago, that came before us that we did ask the proponent to decrease the size of his building. I think we've done it twice, if I can recall, and the proponent has gone ahead and has decreased the size of the house. And I'm just wondering, maybe that's something we should be going back to see if the owner would decrease the size of the house, because again, it should be smaller lots should have smaller houses, not the same size house. And a 1,500 square foot house is a regular bungalow on a small lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Councillor McDermott.
You know, I've seen a lot of projects that get done around this town. They don't get as much attention as this. And the next thing you know, you have places that you can reach out and touch someone. This is not one of these cases. This is a case of, it's on Idlewild Street. I've been out there a number of times, heard of what they said. It's just a simple one-story retirement place for the people to live in. And I really can't believe we're taking issue with this. We have seen so many things come through here. This is a small ask compared to some of the asks that we get in planning on a regular basis here. And this is just a couple that want to retire and have peace in their valley. I've heard some of the arguments about it, but to me, this is, I don't know, I've been out there numerous times, and I've talked to this gentleman and his wife. It's really nothing compared to some of the stuff that goes on here. And, you know, sometimes we do things that we regret doing, and sometimes we don't. But you know what? I can't believe we're even talking about this. But nevertheless, it is what it is. But I support this. This is one of my constituents who's just looking for a better way to minimize his life and his wife's life, as his children will be moving out of the home, going to university. This is a guy just trying to get ahead. He's nothing more than that. And it's just a very simple building. And, you know, we can say what we want, but I have to stand up for my constituent in this case. I have been out there. I have seen the site. I have heard, you know, Mr. Vanderveen, and I don't think that the planning is going to lose any sleep over this one house. My goodness. I just don't know what we're looking for, but I'm sure you're going to tell me, right, Your Worship? So that's my only comment.
Your Worship, and then I'll go to Councillor Butler.
Yeah, I think it's very important that we try to accommodate people who want to downsize and want to stay in the community. I think part of our problem is that we don't have accommodations for a lot of other people. This particular case, the individuals want to sever a parcel off. That's great. This parcel will be the smallest parcel in that neighborhood, and by far, and the house will be among one of the larger houses in the neighborhood. So that's the issue. And the only reason Councillor Noyes raises it, and I raised it during the discussion, is that we have leaned on people who have been severing off parcels to try to build houses that are more in conformity with the size of the lot. And that's what the lot coverage is all about. Lot coverage provides you with a guideline as to what size of house you can build on this parcel. They could go up 2 stories, but I get it. They're seniors. They want to have a bungalow. I'm fine with that. I don't take any issue with Councillor Noyes raising the size. I certainly commend you, Councillor McDermott, for meeting with your constituents and trying to put forth their case. I get that as well. So I'm not going to lose any sleep over this. I'm sure staff didn't lose any sleep over this. The reality is that they're requesting a parcel that is 35% below the zoning requirement, and a building that's 30% larger than is permitted on the parcel. So that is noticeable, and it's not inconsistent for us to be raising that during these meetings, because we've done it before. This would be possibly the 4th time where we've said to an owner, we'd like you to look at the size of the building that you're going to put on this parcel. Thank you.
I'm going to go to Councillor Butler, then I'll go to Councillor Lubberts, and then I'll go to you, Councillor McDermott. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really don't have any issue with this particular property or the size of the building. I when I first got married, my husband and I lived in a 1,500 square foot bungalow, and it was on a small parcel of property on Ribstock Road in Crystal Beach. And so I don't have any issues with it. The property that I lived in was looked big, but actually smaller. So I think it's fine. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I understand completely where Councillor McDermott is coming from. In fact, I had a constituent myself on Rebstock Road that wanted to build a house, and he tried working with our staff for a couple years, and it wasn't until he finally brought a house that actually fit on the lot where he didn't have to have any minor variances that he finally got his application through. So I understand where Councillor McDermott is coming from, but if we're going to make people build their houses on properties and meet the setbacks, now in this case in Rebstock Road, the lot coverage wasn't an issue. It was the side yard setbacks. And now it's lot coverage, but the side yard setbacks are being met. But even still, the frustration was there for my constituent, and he had to find a smaller house to fit. And so I think in consistency, let's be consistent and require that the lot coverage rules be met.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. I'll go. Councillor Zanko, did you want to speak? I'm wondering if I could hand the chair over to you so I could speak briefly.
Sure, no, I don't want to speak, so I will take the chair.
Thank you. And if I may, Madam Chair, I appreciate where council is coming from with regard to the parcel fabric in the area and the size of the lot. I also appreciate, a Fort Erie resident who wants to age in place and they have a piece of property and a little bit of a nest egg next door that would give them that flexibility. I look at what's being done in other municipalities. I look at, the postage size lots that you get up in, some of our neighbors to the north. I don't think that we're going there with this. I look, we have our interior side yard setbacks are still in excess of what the zoning bylaw requires. And that really, having lived in a house that actually had a reduction, that's really what gives you that feeling of being squeezed in and houses really close together. You can kind of go further front and back. I think there's a house on Idlewild a little further up the road that is really squeezed in. It's a larger lot, but it's a much, much larger house that almost utilizes all the property. I think the coverage is close to 50%, and we're not getting that here. Certainly, I don't know if it's 1,500 square feet including the garage, or if it's yeah. So we're talking a 1,200 square foot house. If we did approve this, it would kind of add to that, idea of smaller houses. We're seeing a lot of houses now that are kind of 1,600, 1,700, 2,000 square feet. A new house constructed in that 1,200 square foot range would help meet that housing mix. Certainly a retired or a couple who are planning on aging in place and retiring in Fort Erie, they're building a house for that. It certainly meets that need. So I really don't have any issue with this. Certainly if staff want to go back and have that discussion with the applicants, I think that's fair. Certainly councillors have brought that up as a concern, but the way it looks right now, I'd be prepared to support it as is, and certainly if they want to have those discussions and there's some arrangement that can be made, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I'm just glad to see a couple want to stay in Fort Erie and stay in the community here, and hopefully when their kids go to university they'll come back too. So thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Is there any other comments or questions? And if there is, can you speak up, because I can't see everyone.
Councillor McDermott.
Councillor McDermott.
Councillor McDermott?
Thank you. I don't want anyone to take it the wrong way, because, you know, I wasn't, if I offended you there, Anne-Marie, I'm sorry. I just basically look at some of the stuff that we do. And it's, in the future, are we going to say every time somebody comes in here to get something amended on their property, nope, we're not going to do that? I mean, if it's something totally outrageous, we're going to say no, right, correct? But in the case of this place here, that's the only one that I'm talking about. I just feel that they should get a fair shake. I mean, they've been community citizens here for some time. So, you know, the kids are going to university, as we all know. So, you know, they'll build this house, they'll sell this house, and no, it won't be a short-term rental. And you know, and life will be all good. I just don't want to create any more, you know, type of delays on something that, to me, and I've seen a lot of stuff go through here, y'all have, and I just think that giving a normal Joe a little break on this, and as long as planning doesn't think it's outrageous, I think sometimes you just got to listen to staff and trust them. So I think this is the case on this home, and I believe they've done their due diligence, and I thank them for doing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McDermott. Is there any other questions or comments?
Nope.
I'm seeing none. Oh, sorry. Your worship, did you have? Okay, I will call the question then. All those in favor? Opposed, and I can't see Councillor Noyes, so I'm.
No, her hand's up.
Okay, so this report carries then. And I will pass the chair back to you, Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. So we have no further reports this evening. Are there any questions, comments regarding new business or inquiries this evening from council? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. It's regarding the Crystal Beach secondary plan. And I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Dolch earlier today because, of course, I think all of us have seen the emails going back and forth in regards to this. And I think he was being funny. I didn't catch it.
He was.
Anyway, so I wasn't here at the beginning, I think, when the Crystal Beach plan started. So I was trying to go through the history here, and I saw that on June 21st of this year, we changed, or the staff changed based on council's comments about affordable housing. We changed the density for this, I think, medium density from 2575 per hectare to 52 per 100 per hectare. And we did that on June 21st, 2021. This was nearing the end of the neighborhood planning process, and after the open houses, I do know that it was in the document that we discussed during the public meeting. But the process causes me concern that the change happened so late in this, and I think many of those who participated earlier in the plan may not have been aware of this particular change in density prior to the official public meeting, even though it was in the narrative of the public meeting. I do agree with that. If a higher density was perhaps discussed earlier, or those who have participated or made aware of it, they may have had some concerns expressed earlier in the process, so we may not have gotten to the point that we're at now. There may have been more public input in opposition to changing this density in this area. Again, the purpose of public input is to consider concerns regarding potential changes in their neighborhood, so that if nearing the end of the process you change something, it's hard to kind of say, well, you know, you had your opportunity to speak, because I honestly don't know how many people realize that the density had changed. I didn't realize until I actually started going backwards, so to speak, through the different reports. And then I noticed that on June 21st, 2021, we changed the density. So I don't know how we can address this, whether we can, and I don't know if Ms. Dolch can speak on it. I know her and I had a long discussion on this, and I'm not a planner. And I know there's always changes that happen as the process moves along. And but I would be interested to know if there's any way we can address this concern.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. Ms. Dolch, did you care to comment on that?
Sure, thank you. Through you to the councillor. So yes, it is correct that it was changed, and it was changed for a couple of reasons. First reason was that there was increased density proposed in the core. There was 6 stories proposed originally in the core along Erie Road. There was a lot of objection to that from the public, so it was modified to go back to 3 stories with 4.5 story height on the corners. The Crystal Beach secondary plan does require us to accommodate roughly 2,000 people, new residents in Crystal Beach. So in order to do that, we do need to increase density. So when we moved that density from the core on Erie Road, we did have to pick locations where it seemed appropriate to provide additional density beyond what was originally anticipated. That, as well as Councillor Butler's motion, we started to look at sites where we could provide some density for affordable housing. So those 2 things combined kind of made that change happen at that time. That was just after the open house. Obviously, once we got to the public meeting, it was communicated, as you indicated, Councillor Noyes. And obviously, what happens in a lot of secondary plan when we put forward a secondary plan is the public doesn't necessarily understand density, which is a tough thing to understand, and I appreciate it's a planner's term, and a lot of times people don't understand what that means. So all of a sudden, when a development application comes forward, they see what that density could mean. And that's the struggle that we face at this point. Obviously, I believe at this point, council has approved us to move forward and authorized us to bring the bylaws forward. Obviously, you still have on November 22nd a chance to look at those bylaws before they're passed. So I'll leave that with you. But generally, those are the reasons why that density was increased. Should council modify those densities, that density does need to be picked up somewhere else. The region will be looking for us to pick that up elsewhere. So we will need to try to accommodate that elsewhere.
Thank you for that, Ms. Dolch. It actually I started recalling the whole process, how we led to that after your explanation, because when Councillor Noyes had brought it up, I wasn't recalling. So I really, really do appreciate that. Councillor Noyes, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. And thank you, Ms. Dolch, for your explanation. And I can appreciate there's a lot of factors here and there's a lot of moving parts at the same time, but the bottom line is that those people who didn't want the 6 stories were listened to, and they got 4 stories, and it was moved over, the density was moved over to this area without really any input from the residents of this area. So, and again, I do understand from Mrs. Dolch's explanation that we can modify the density back to the 25-75. And I think this is a perfect spot actually for higher density, like from 25 to 75. It's within walking distance of the library, the arenas, the downtown core, all kinds of things. The pharmacy, some of the doctors live close enough to walk. For all the right reasons, I would support something between the 25 and 75 density, but I would have a hard time without public input supporting the difference between that's now 50 to 100 in this particular area. And I should have mentioned it's the Rebstock Ridge area, which I didn't at the beginning, but I think all you guys clued in pretty quick. Thank you.
We did, Councillor Noyes. Thank you very much. Was there anything else, Councillor Noyes? Okay. Any other members of council have any questions or new business inquiries? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And this was a concern that I had as well. And I'm going to be meeting with staff on Friday to talk about our secondary plan. But my recollection of the motion that was brought forward back in May by Councillor Butler, she was discussing affordable housing. I didn't read anything in the motion that discussed increasing the limits in our definitions of density. And what Councillor Butler was basically asking for, from what I read in the motion, was that we ask developers she was looking to see if we could ask developers or recommend developers bring in more affordable housing when they build their subdivisions. So instead of having 10 units affordable, have 15, just for an example, right? But I read nothing in there that she was even indicating that we increase the limits of the density definitions. Then when you look at when they made the change, staff came back with a different report and said based on that motion, which mentioned nothing about density, they changed the definition and they changed the limits. And even when you look at what Councillor Noyes is talking about, our definition of density, that takes you, even this development on Rebstock Road, if you were to stay at 75 units per hectare, which, as far as I'm concerned, staff was never given direction to change that number, right? This is 111 units per hectare. That's high density. That's not medium density. But I will have my meeting on Friday with staff, but I can say that I looked at that motion that Councillor Butler brought forward. I read nothing in there about changing the definition of density. And then when Ms. Dolch mentions that the density was taken away from Erie Road and Derby Road area, when we went through the secondary plan and we had the focus groups, it was never agreed that we would have 6 to 8 stories on Erie Road and Derby Road. There was some discussions at a few tables, but it was never the consensus of the focus group that that's where that density would be. Our staff brought that forward. And I argued with our CAO, and I said we never agreed to that. So staff is now trying to say that we took their density away. We never took their density away. They never had the density in the first place. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make sure that everybody was clear on that.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. And before I go to his worship, I just want clarification from Ms. Dolch, if we can. Just to clarify, the reason the density changed was because of the whole 6 to 8 story, moving that density from one location to another. It was not because of Councillor Butler's motion. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's correct, Councillor Dubanow. The main focus was the fact that we have to accommodate that 2,000 to 2,200 residents in Crystal Beach, and we need to figure out where to place those people. Obviously, affordability with affordability, you do have to increase density to get that affordability because the issue is land cost. So it does relate to her motion a bit, but the main focus is the fact that we need to accommodate those residents that were envisioned by the region that are going to locate in Crystal Beach. Generally, we have to separate our targets, and right now we're to 2041 targets. That's what we're anticipating for Crystal Beach. So we haven't even allocated the 2051 numbers that are coming down, which will be with this new regional official plan. So there'll be additional density that we'll need to look at as we relook at Crystal Beach or somewhere else in the future to pick up additional density. So we're giving so much growth number that we have to accommodate that in our urban areas. And what we've been doing is splitting it amongst all the urban pockets, the 6 communities that we have. When we start to decrease one, we have to pick it up in another. It's not to say we can't. I'm just saying that that was the thrust of that decision, is why we increased that density. We found key locations that we felt appropriate for that density to occur.
Thank you, Ms. Dolch. Your worship.
Yeah, just listening to the discussion, I don't want the impression left with staff particularly that we think that there's some sleight of hand going on here and that we've been victimized because they've slipped something by us. That didn't happen at all. Councillor Butler's motion was quite comprehensive and it covered a lot of area. The main theme was how can we find mechanisms to create affordable housing? And I think there were, 10 maybe items that were listed in that motion. The secondary plan has gone through a process, and we were all engaged throughout the process, so we know what was going on. We were part of the we received minutes from the focus groups, from the open houses, etc. And we did receive a report earlier this year, and we did pass that report, and we did support the secondary plan. And I think, in fairness, if I were to encapsulate my position on this, it is that maybe I didn't fully appreciate the extent of the density that could be visited upon this particular site that Councillor Noyes has raised. And, the challenge for us, the reality is that growth is going to occur. And when the province sends out numbers and then the region tries to divvy them up, our best course of action is to prepare for what we know is going to happen. Because it's happening already. It's been happening here for the last 5 or 6 years. And the notion that the influx of population is going to change, I think, is pretty unlikely. So that our best movement is to try to manage the growth that is going to occur. And every part of this municipality is going to end up having to take on some of that responsibility. Our challenge is to try to maintain the feel of this community as much as possible, to protect the natural heritage as much as possible, to keep this community something that the people who live here value and the people that are moving here value. This particular proposal that's been put forth that only some of us have seen some of, and many of us haven't seen much of, creates a challenge for us in that regard. But it's not staff's fault. The public somehow thinks that we, as a council, come up with these plans and then are trying to foist it on them. That's not the way this all works. And I've responded, as you all know, in depth to people, just pointing out that these proposals come forward and then our staff looks at them in the context of the planning documents that they have to deal with. To the extent that we provide the planning documents, we provide the platform for the developers to work with. So we haven't passed the secondary plan yet. So there still is an opportunity to make sure that what's in that secondary plan is something that we're prepared to live with and that our planners can work with. But I don't want the impression left when we leave here, and I definitely don't want the public to get the impression that the staff isn't trying to do everything that they can to fulfill the vision that we have that has been expressed in our strategic plan, because they have. They're extremely talented. We have received many, many reports on many, many developments, and this planning staff is, in my view, the best in Niagara by far. And if I had knowledge of what's outside of Niagara, I could probably expand my definition of they're the best of. They're not the greatest of all time yet, but they're working on it. And so I think we need to be very cautious when we reference these issues, because, as Harry Truman said, the buck stops here. The buck stops with us, and we're the ones that have to be paying attention. If we miss something, that's on us. That's not on our planning staff. So let's make sure that when we deal with this secondary plan, we do get the answers, and hopefully Councillor Lubberts will share with the rest of us what comes out of your meeting with planning staff on the secondary plan. It's your ward. It's an area that you need to be cognizant of, but I have nothing but the greatest admiration for our planning staff. Sometimes I'm a little harsh with them, I get that, but that's my job. Their job is to serve our community, and I think they're doing a very good job.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well put. Before I go back to Councillor Lubberts, I'm just wondering if there's any members of council who haven't had any new business or inquiries that they brought up this evening. Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And just to follow up on what the mayor has said, we just heard that the density change had nothing to do with Councillor Butler's motion back in May Well, I sent an email to our CAO, and maybe he can share that with the rest of council, but I showed him where, and I think it was a report from the secondary plan, the draft, and it said clear that based on that motion, the definition of medium density was changed. So it was definitely said that way, and I know what I read, and I sent it to the CAO if he wants to share it with everybody, or if I need to share it with everybody, but that's what happened in there. Now, we might have missed it, and I'm not saying that staff doesn't do a good job, but when mistakes are made, right, and things happen that, and we're told that this is the way it happened and it didn't happen that way, then I get upset. Because I know I went through and I read the reports, and I know I've sat in those focus group meetings, and everybody that was at that focus group and everybody that participated in the secondary plan, we all did it in good faith. And so we're expecting that we're going to get what we want, but I can tell you, this development that's on Rebstock Road, 111 units per hectare, is not medium density.
It's 103, just for accuracy.
Yeah, and thank you.
I read 111.
I think it's 103.
And thank you for that, Your Worship, and also just for the sake of accuracy, just when Ms. DeWalch had answered the question that I asked a moment ago, she didn't say that it had nothing to do with Councillor Butler's motion. She said it wasn't caused because of it, but it kind of, it was related to that. I just want to clarify because that's not what Ms. DeWalch said. Ms. Butler, or Councillor Butler, I saw your hand up.
Yes, so I just wanted to say a couple of things, and first is that I totally agree with what the mayor had said, and I do recall that we all voted in favor of that report, and I do know that my affordability motion may have spurred that on. Great. I think that affordable housing should be top of mind. Sometimes though, when you vote for something, you don't understand what the implications are going to be, and hence this development that's being proposed. But I've said from the very start that we should be building up, and we should be finding places such as Jarvis Street, which would pump new energy down in that area. And I still believe that. So if we're looking to find places to compensate for the loss in Crystal Beach, that might be an area to look at. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Any other members of council? All right, seeing none. I'll move us then on to the business status report. Any questions or comments, Your Worship? I mentioned that he's usually the one who catches the long list with how busy planning has been. If that's the case, Your Worship, I happily hand the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dubanow. And then that takes us to infrastructure services. Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. We have no presentation or delegations. We have one report, IS 46 2021, Crystal Beach Street naming signs. It was postponed from our October 18th meeting, so that motion or that report is on the floor for any comments or questions. Mayor Redekop.
Chair, I keep asking for this thing to be deferred, and the BIA keeps telling me that they want to deal with this. So I think we should deal with this tonight. And just to create the context, the BIA was presented with an opportunity to put up area-specific street signs for all of the intersections along Erie Road from Ridgeway Road to Schooley. So there would be a sign on Erie Road, and there would be a sign at each street that ends at Erie Road that would be of some significance to that business improvement area. And a sign was designed, a sign was created, and the report indicates that there should have been more public input into it. I can't disagree with that. As often happens, when something of this nature is referred to, they say, but Mayor, that's what you said. You said you like public consultation, so I can't really argue against that. There was some public input here. The high school students apparently had something to do with this, and the BIA members who represent the businesses in that area also had gone through this and voted and supported the sign that was selected. To me, it's a matter of supreme indifference whether I like the sign or I don't like the sign, and I would suggest that for all of us, it should be the same. We're not the business improvement area business owners. We're not the ones that are contributing to their levy. We're not the ones that are trying to promote our business area. They are. And so if this is the sign that they like and they want to put it up, I don't have an issue with that. I don't have a problem with that, and I don't think any of us should have a problem with it either. But that's just my view. So the idea of further deferring this and delaying it so that there's a public competition to decide what should go up on these street corners in the business improvement area doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, because it doesn't make any sense to me what I think should go in the BIA. I think what should go in the BIA is what the business owners support, and they support these signs. So some of you may have seen them, some of you may, I think they're in the report, so you get a look at them. Hey, I may have picked something different, but that doesn't matter what I would pick. So I'd like to amend the motion, the recommendation. I'm good with paragraph 1. I think paragraph 2 and 3 should be deleted. I'm good with 4, and I think 2 and 3 should be substituted with this. The council approves the request of the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Area to erect specific street name signs for the intersections along Erie Road from Ridgeway Road to Schooley Road, and directs staff to work with the CBBIA regarding installation. That's my amendment.
That amendment's on the floor. Any comments or questions? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, just a quick question. I completely agree with where the mayor is going. I'm just wondering if the mayor perhaps envisions that perhaps this could be a framework to possibly be utilized in other business improvement areas. I think there was some mention of it in the report. I think it's a good idea. I think it would kind of give some uniqueness to each of our downtown cores, and I'm certainly hope that this isn't just a one-off. I hope we could see this perhaps in Ridgeway, down at the south end, perhaps up on Jarvis Street and in that area as well, Stevensville even. I think it's a phenomenal idea. I'm just wondering if that's something perhaps the mayor envisions.
Well, if I might, Chair, paragraph 3 of or now what would be paragraph 3, or the final recommendation, is that staff develop a policy. So absolutely, this is something that we've seen it in other municipalities where there are some specific heritage areas, business areas that have their own street signs that are reflective of what's going on there. So, yeah, no, I would encourage that, and I think staff is supportive of that. It's just that we don't have a policy. So this would provide a policy.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other comments or questions? Mayor, just one, you want to make a change to paragraph 2. Are you eliminating everything to do with the 100-year anniversary as well?
Well, no, because that's something that the BIA can deal with. They can address it. They're thinking that this has something to do with the 100th anniversary. That's how the initiative came forward. So they're actually thinking that this does have something to do with the 100th anniversary, and that's why they want to move forward with it. It doesn't have 100th anniversary on the signs, but this is part of their initiative in that regard.
So this is the way the BIA wants to go forward?
This is what I'm advised.
Okay.
And they've
All right.
passed a resolution.
Okay. Any comments? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Now I'll go back to the original report. Any comments or questions? I'll call the question to the report as amended. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to, I think we got, do we go to business status report, Madam Clerk, or just new business and inquiries?
We should have new business inquiries.
Pardon me?
We should have new business inquiries.
Yes, I don't have that here on my,
On the next page.
Oh, I see, it's, yeah, it got moved to new
yeah,
10.4.
okay, I think maybe because
Just
it
an
was a
error.
report from the last meeting. Right, so we, any new business or inquiries? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, perhaps Mr. Walsh can bring this up to the region, but since the opening of the new drive-throughs on Garrison Road, we, at least every morning when I drive by, and I usually pull into Starbucks now to grab coffee, I notice that there is at least one car, sometimes two, trying to make a left turn going eastbound on Garrison Road into the original entrance for the plaza where Primary Care and Yukiguni is. And I know heading northbound on Thompson Road, there's a no left turn sign at the other right in, right out that we have entering the Walmart Plaza. And there doesn't appear to be one on Garrison Road there. And I know this is a regional road, but I'm just wondering, Mr. Chair, if perhaps Mr. Walsh could bring this up to his counterparts at the region. Just with the amount of traffic we have there, the amount of turning traffic, I think it might be appropriate to enhance the signage just so we don't have left turn conflicts going out on a road that's only designed for right in, right out.
Mr. Walsh?
Noted. We also have issues in front of the McDonald's of a similar nature. The member from the region that sits on the traffic coordinating committee wasn't at the last meeting, but I'll certainly give him a ring.
Councillor Dubanow, any?
Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other new business or inquiries? Seeing none, that takes us to the business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Mayor Redekop, I'll turn the chair back to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lubberts. Are there any meetings that anyone wishes to announce? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I'm just going to bring my calendar up to double check. We do have a Transportation Steering Committee meeting at the region. It's going to be held over Zoom virtually. That's at 9:30 tomorrow morning. We also have a Fort Erie Public Library Board meeting. That's going to be held at 4 p.m. Tomorrow, and that is going to be at the Centennial Library branch. And I'm just looking through here to see if I have any other meetings. I don't think anyone cares about my son's dentist appointment. The following week, I'll just mention this now to give notice. Normally, we would have a gaming board meeting on Wednesday, the 24th. However, due to the agenda being light, we're canceling this month's meeting. We're going to roll it into a meeting in a meeting in December. I know we do have the meeting on the 22nd, but I just thought I'd announce that now to give everyone plenty of notice. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Yes, I have a meeting. The Fort Erie Non-for-Profit Housing meets on November 17th at 9 a.m. at May's Restaurant. Thank you.
Any other meetings? Then if Councillors Butler or Zanko, nothing to report? Okay. Councillor Dubanow, do your thing.
Yes, Your Worship, I'd like to move that council and committee adjourn at 9:28 this evening.
All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you.